Welcome back, mystery lovers. Today's case is going to keep you on the edge of your seat. The case of Andrea DelVesco. Andrea DelVesco was born in Chicago, USA, in 1994. Her parents, Arthur and Leslie. Her older brother, James, was 2 years old at her birth, and her younger sister, Alexis, was born 4 years later. The family was happy and loving, moving several times before settling in Austin, Texas. Andrea's mother, Leslie, studied financial marketing at Southern Methodist University. She worked for American Airlines and then as a customer service manager in the mortgage division of Citibank. Andrea's father, Arthur, managed the family's assets as the owner of an investment firm. His hard work helped the family become quite wealthy, allowing them to live comfortably. The family's wealth enabled them to send all their children to university. Before that, the children attended a private school with a rigorous academic program taught by the best teachers in the state. From an early age, they engaged in a wide range of activities, from sports to religion, which helped instill high moral values in them. Andrea excelled academically, played sports, and developed in a well-rounded manner. She loved visiting museums and learning about art. She is kind and caring towards those around her. She has a particularly close relationship with her mother. From a young age, Andrea and her family traveled a lot, which broadened her horizons and exposed her to many different people and cultures. As she grew up, Andrea became her parents' hope and pride. In 2012, after finishing school, she applied to several educational institutions simultaneously. Her parents hoped she would attend the University of Chicago, where her older brother was studying, and for a while, Andrea preferred this option too. However, she decided to wait until she received responses from all the schools she applied to before making a decision. Ultimately, she chose the psychology department at the University of California, Los Angeles. By 2022, this university was ranked among the best in America. It has always been highly regarded and prestigious, with highly qualified teachers and a strong scientific and technical foundation. This choice reassured her family. Andrea then moved to Los Angeles to attend school. Her parents were happy with her decision and supported her choice, although they were worried that she would be too far away. Her brother would no longer be able to take care of her. With the support of her family, she began her new life. Upon arrival, Andrea needed to choose a club to join, which helped her develop lasting friendships and gain support from more experienced students. To become a full member, one usually needed to pass a test and make a small donation. The student community was very close-knit, with many students living so openly that they left their doors unlocked, allowing them to visit each other freely. Although it was generally safe, incidents could still occur. Andrea happily joined the club. She had a great sense of humor, was good-looking, and dressed well. Her impeccable style made her popular. She also created many extravagant outfits that amazed everyone. Andrea was the center of attention at any party. However, she balanced her social life with her studies. After completing her freshman year, she got a job as a paralegal at a law firm in Brentwood, handling administrative tasks. This job did not fit her schedule, so she found a new part-time job. She kept changing jobs to better balance her work and studies, allowing her to have pocket money and not have to depend on her parents. Andrea continued her student life until she graduated in 2015. She always dreamed of traveling after finishing her studies. As her senior year approached, she lived in a dormitory just 5 minutes away from the main university building. This dorm is a great place for students, hosting many sorority parties and university events. Andrea shares her living space with her sorority friends and a small dog she adopted from a rescue. She loves her pet so much that she even has a social media page dedicated to posting cute pictures of it. One day, the dog goes missing, leaving Andrea devastated as she searches frantically for it. Luckily, her beloved dog is found 5 days later. In September, Andrea is preparing to start her senior year of college, with classes scheduled to begin on September 24th. However, the fall semester officially starts on the 21st. On the 19th, she shares one of her favorite music videos on her social media page. The very next day, September 20th, 2015, is the last day before the girls in the club return to school. Everyone was having fun on the balcony of the apartment building. Andrea was at a club activity until 3 in the morning with her friend Jessica. Jessica then went to her bedroom around 3:30 and went to sleep, while Andrea lay on the couch in the living room. However, Andrea could not sleep that night. A few hours later, Samantha, another neighbor, came running to Andrea's door, screaming about a fire. Andrea's door was closed, which was unusual because she always left her room open for her friends in the club. Samantha tried to open the door but couldn't, so she called the other girls to help. Together, with great difficulty, they managed to open the door and found the room filled with smoke and fire. They found Andrea lying motionless on the bed but could not call her because of the danger. Realizing that they could not safely enter the room, the girls evacuated and called 9 people at a time. They waited on the sidewalk for help. Later, the fire truck arrived at the scene. Firefighters quickly used hoses to extinguish the fire on the second floor. A total of 32 firefighters worked to effectively extinguish the fire. After the incident, rumors spread among the students that Andrea was dead, as she had not escaped the building and was not seen. When the firefighters finally entered the room, they found the body of a woman lying on her bed. During the investigation, the police determined that the fire started in Andrea's bedroom. At the scene, the police were unable to identify the deceased because her face was disfigured by the fire. They were only able to confirm that it was a female body. Fingerprints could not be taken because her hands were too badly burned. Surprisingly, the girl's small dog was found by firefighters. The dog was severely burned, barely breathing at the feet of its owner. However, it was later decided to euthanize the dog to reduce its suffering. After the incident, the dormitory students were relocated to different housing while repairs started on the burned building. The girls were frightened, leading the university to enhance campus security. Everyone believed that Andrea was the victim of the fire since all other students were confirmed safe during roll call. They reported seeing Andrea lying on her bed in the room that was on fire and were puzzled as to why she did not get up and leave. They found it odd and speculated that she might have lost consciousness, suffocated from carbon monoxide, or had already died. Andrea's parents returned to Austin from a long trip, unaware of what had happened to their daughter. They began to worry when Andrea did not reach out to them, and their attempts to contact her were unsuccessful. Concerned, her mother called one of their neighbors and learned about the fire, which might have involved Andrea. However, the police had not yet confirmed the identity of the body found at the scene. The entire family gathered to pray for Andrea's safety and traveled to Los Angeles. Meanwhile, police began investigating the case. They discovered that Jessica, Andrea's neighbor, was the last person to communicate with her before the tragedy. Police planned to interview Jessica to gather details about their last conversation, hoping she might have witnessed something important. Police interviewed Jessica to learn how the fire started, but her answers were not helpful. She quickly stated that she saw nothing and had no idea what caused the fire. Friends from the sisterhood, who also spoke with the police, suggested that Andrea may have accidentally fallen asleep with an aromatic candle still lit. They were convinced that the fire was not set intentionally, as Andrea had no enemies or anyone who wished her harm. To verify this theory, a detailed examination of the incident scene was needed. Initially, they inspected electrical appliances and outlets for any short circuits, but everything appeared to be in order. No candles were found at the scene, and the only item that raised suspicion was the trash can located at the head of the bed. Experienced firefighters speculated that this could be the starting point of the fire. However, friends and members of the sisterhood confirmed that Andrea never slept near the trash can, which was typically placed at the opposite end of the room. Unfortunately, the contents of the can could not be identified without a detailed chemical analysis, as everything was completely destroyed. Forensic experts specializing in arson were called in to investigate. 2 hours after the fire was put out, police were convinced that it was not accidental. The critical piece of evidence was a metal trash can, which someone could have used to pour flammable liquid and ignite a fire. The flames originated near the head of the girl's bed and spread throughout the room. Forensic experts confirmed their suspicions when it was clear that the fire was intentionally set. The investigation at the crime scene intensified. Forensic experts found a large number of traces of blood splashes on the bed and around it, with most of the stains surviving the fire. Police were concerned when neighbors reported trying to call the Andrea as they entered her room at the start of the fire, but she did not respond and was found lying motionless. They feared she was already dead and suspected that the perpetrator had set the fire to destroy evidence. By this time, the police had already pieced together a rough timeline of the events from that tragic evening. They interviewed many students, focusing mainly on the roommates. According to the roommates, a group of girls had been chatting on the balcony before entering the apartment building. The last confirmed sighting of Andrea alive was at 5:50 a.m. Samantha, her roommate, was preparing for work on campus and saw that Andrea was sleeping on the couch in the living room at that time. Samantha left for work and returned around 6:30 a.m., but Andrea was no longer on the couch. She had gone to her room, but this time her door was closed, which was unusual for her. This behavior struck Samantha as odd, and she wondered why Andrea had suddenly gone to her room and shut the door, especially after being fast asleep before. Feeling concerned, Samantha noted this difference when she then saw the fire. While talking to other students in the dorm, the police discovered a significant clue. A girl named Sarah returned to her room around 5:30 a.m. after dropping her boyfriend off at the airport. Her apartment was directly above Andrea's room. Since it was still dark at that hour, Sarah noticed a male figure as she tried to open her front door. The building was for women, but it wasn't unusual for guys to visit their girlfriends, so she didn't think much of it at first. However, she became alarmed when the man immediately ran away upon seeing her, as if he was trying to hide. This frightened and confused her. She described the man as wearing a black baseball cap, a black and white t-shirt, and dark jeans. Feeling scared, Sarah hurried into her room and locked the door. Once inside, she quickly texted her boyfriend to tell him about the suspicious man she had seen. Unsure whether he posed a threat or if she should contact the police, she shared her concerns. Her boyfriend reassured her that it was likely just someone visiting, suggesting there was no need to panic. Later Sarah went to bed, but around 6:15, she was awakened by a woman's scream and the frantic barking of a dog from the room below her, where Andrea lived. This startled her, especially since the dog had never barked before and usually stayed calm. She realized something was wrong downstairs. Sarah tried to reach Andrea to check on her, but couldn't get in touch. She called 911, but the emergency services didn't take her seriously because the area was known for its student parties and noise. Still, a patrol car was dispatched to the dormitory. The police arrived around 6:23 but left a few minutes later without updating Sarah on their findings. They reported seeing nothing unusual, no person, no barking dog, and no screams. They only shined their flashlights into Andrea's room from the street without conducting a thorough investigation. Believing that someone might have had too much to drink or had an argument that upset the dog, the police decided to leave. Meanwhile, Sarah was watching from the window and tried calling Andrea, but no one answered. She also tried to contact the other girls in the building, but it seemed that everyone was asleep. After the police left, she heard a loud bang at around 6:45 a.m. Sarah rushed to the balcony and looked down, seeing thick smoke rising. She also spotted a stranger in a black and white t-shirt jumping from the balcony below. Panicking, Sarah feared that the man had harmed Andrea. She quickly grabbed her phone and called 911 to report the situation, then ran downstairs, where other students had gathered near Andrea's room, trying to open the door. Sarah quickly left the building to chase the intruder. She spotted him and ran after him down the street, but he escaped by getting into a red Nissan and driving away. Sarah recalled a detail on the car window that had a fraternity sticker. Meanwhile, Andrea's friends had made it into her room. They called out to her, but there was no response. The students claimed they saw her lying motionless on her bed, surrounded by flames. Several girls noticed blood on her neck, chest, and shoulders. In a panic, the friends left the burning house and saw the red Nissan speeding away, with Sarah in pursuit. However, none of Andrea's friends could identify anyone who might have wanted to harm her. All of her friends had cared for her, and at the time of her death, she was not in a romantic relationship. The investigation looked into the possibility of a robbery, but nothing was stolen from Andrea's room. It is thought that Andrea may have met someone on Tinder and the date did not go well. But this has not been confirmed as there are no leads. The police reviewed the surveillance footage from the campus, but it was unhelpful because of its poor quality. They searched all nearby streets for a red Nissan car with a fraternity sticker that had been spotted near the crime scene. Police interviewed all the students, focusing on fraternity members and residents of nearby homes. Nicholas and Mohair later reported a burglary, claiming that their laptops and speakers had been stolen, and one of them said that the keys to his red Nissan were also missing. This occurred on the same evening as Andrea's murder. A few days after the fire, police officially identified the charred remains as belonging to 21-year-old Andrea DelVesco, using dental records provided by her family. An autopsy conducted on September 22 indicated that she was wearing only a sports bra at the time of her death, which raised suspicions of rape, although this could not be confirmed due to the condition of her body. Most of her hair had been burned away, and there was significant blood loss, particularly from the back of her head. Approximately 90% of her body was burned. Forensic experts found multiple fatal stab wounds on Andrea's body, mainly to her head and neck. She had 5 stab wounds on the right side of her neck and 2 on the left, for a total of 19 stab wounds. The lack of soot and carbon monoxide in her body suggests that Andrea was dead before the fire started. This suggests that the fire was an attempt to cover up the crime rather than the cause of death. As a result, the investigation was upgraded to a murder case, creating a sense of fear across the campus. On the day the official forensic report was made public, police traced a stolen laptop and speakers to a man named Joseph in Fresno, California, which is over 3 hours from the crime scene. Police quickly going to his address. When police met Joseph, he claimed that he had borrowed the speakers from his roommate and that he had done nothing wrong. The situation became more complicated when the stolen items were passed around. His friend was Alberto Medina. Alberto claimed that he had lent the items to Joseph, explaining that his friends, who were moving out, had given them to him for safekeeping. However, Alberto then disappeared. Police began searching for Alberto on September 24th. He was arrested 2 days later and brought in for questioning. Alberto's testimony was inconsistent. He said that on September 18th, he went to the University of California with his friend Eric Marquez. They spent the week together, attending a Chris Brown concert and then going to a party with friends who had laptops and speakers. Under pressure from police, Alberto eventually confessed that he had stolen the items from random people while intoxicated and unaware of his actions, and returned home around 5:30 a.m. The police noted that the fire had not started at that time. When questioned about a suspicious stranger, Alberto unexpectedly claimed he was attacked by someone with a gun while they were returning with the stolen items. The attacker fired at them but missed, allowing them to escape. Alberto described the attacker as wearing dark jeans and a black and white t-shirt, matching the description Sarah had previously given. However, the police still expressed doubts about Alberto's story. Alberto suddenly remembered that his friend Eric had visited Andrea, a beautiful blonde woman he met at a party that same weekend. Eric planned to be intimate with her. When Eric returns to the apartment, he acts strange and nervous. Eric says he hit her and urges Alberto to leave quickly. Alberto's account implicates Eric in Andrea's murder. 5 days after the murder, the police interviewed a new suspect named Eric Marquez. He was 22 years old and a fifth-year medical student at the university. Eric had no previous legal problems and was viewed as a good person. His friend Alberto pointed the police to his home, which was only a 5-minute walk from the crime scene. However, getting Eric to confess was challenging. He stated that he spent the entire weekend drinking at home and hardly went out. Alberto and Eric's testimony was confirmed by surveillance camera footage from their home. When the footage was reviewed, both Eric and Alberto were active from 3 a.m. to 8 a.m., frequently wandering the streets. Alberto was wearing a black and white t-shirt and dark jeans. At 4 a.m., Alberto and Eric left the house for an extended period of time. Alberto was easily recognized by the distinctive tattoos on his arms. A key moment in the footage is Alberto returning to the apartment at around 7:11 a.m. with Andrea's red blanket wrapped around him. This corresponds to the time of the arson. Additionally, a red Nissan, matching Sarah's description, was spotted on video. By 7:30 a.m., Alberto and Eric were seen leaving the house again to throw away some trash. At this time, Alberto was shirtless and Eric had changed his clothing. While the cameras captured this evidence, Eric insisted he could not remember anything. Police obtained a search warrant for Alberto and Eric's apartment. A thorough inspection revealed that Alberto had suffered abrasions to his hands, while Eric had no similar injuries. Police found the red Nissan, which had blood on the steering wheel, dashboard, and driver's door, along with trash and a black sock inside. In the apartment's closet, police discovered a trash bag filled with bloody clothing, Andrea's underwear, and a black sock that matched the sock found in the car, a bloody knife, and a blanket missing from Andrea's room. After conducting the inspection, police gathered enough evidence to formally charge Alberto and Eric. On September 28, Alberto and Eric were charged with murder and burglary, and Albert was additionally charged with arson. Despite the threat of the death penalty, both pleaded not guilty. Their families insisted on a thorough, independent investigation, unable to accept that their son could have committed such a heinous act. Police later interviewed Joseph Garcia, who was found using a stolen laptop and speakers. He claimed that he had witnessed Alberto and Eric returning home that evening. Alberto had confided in him about the incident at the dormitory. He had entered Andrea's room after watching her while she walked her dog, then snuck inside. Alberto took a knife from the kitchen, forced Andrea into the room, and locked the door. He raped her, and when she screamed and fought back, he stabbed her to death and burned the house to cover up his crime. Alberto threatened Joseph to keep quiet. An expert found DNA evidence that showed blood on the suspect's clothes and car matched Andrea's DNA. Additionally, a witness named Julio, a cleaner, observed Alberto getting out of his car and walking toward Andrea's dorm. Julio noted that Alberto had a large tattoo on his arm and was wearing a black and white t-shirt. Alberto and Eric both appeared drunk and said they needed to go to Andrea's room because she needed help. Police determined that Alberto had entered the building while Eric was still in the car, so the blood was only found on the driver's side. Andrea's family was outraged by the police's inaction when Sarah first raised her concerns. The officers neglected to check Andrea's room, the likely scene of the crime. The Los Angeles Police Department announced that the officers involved have been suspended and an internal investigation has been launched to look into their negligence in responding to a call from the victim's friend, Sarah. The findings of that investigation have been submitted to the court. Although the officers were acquitted but were still fired. In the fall of 2016, Eric went on trial for his role in Andrea's murder, along with charges of robbery and arson. Eric and Alberto were charged with animal cruelty due to the injuries Andrea's dog suffered in the fire. In September 2017, the possibility of the death penalty was considered for Alberto. His attorneys urged him to accept a plea deal to receive a lighter sentence and avoid the death penalty, but he refused. As a result, the case was split into two separate trials. Eric was sentenced to 2 years and 8 months after pleading guilty to accessory and abetting. It was determined that he did not participate in the murder or arson. He remained in the car throughout the incident. Alberto Medina's trial began on May 15, 2018. He faced a jury on 5 different charges. Despite this, Alberto chose not to accept the plea deal offered by the prosecution. On May 24, 2018, after extensive deliberation, Alberto pleaded guilty to first-degree murder, arson, animal cruelty, and burglary. The judge decided against the death penalty, sentencing him to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Additionally, the court imposed another 12 years for other charges. Amy Widener faced a significant life change when she became a mother at only giving birth to a daughter. This development was notably challenging for her mother, Gloria Widner. Despite the difficulties, Gloria steadfastly supported her daughter. Little did Gloria know that the complexity of handling her daughter's early pregnancy would soon be eclipsed by an even more distressing event, affecting their family just 2 years later. Born in 1973, Amy Widener was part of a large family that included her older brother, John Paul, who was 1 year older than Amy, and 2 younger sisters, Nee and Cassie, who were 1 and 4 years younger respectively. Their mother, Gloria Widener, single-handedly raised the children following a long-ago divorce from their father, who played no role in their upbringing. The family of 5 resided in Indianapolis, where Amy was her mother's primary aide, handling cooking, cleaning, and caring for her sisters. Amy harbored dreams of becoming a teacher. She was known for her bright and cheerful demeanor as well as an engaging smile. However, at age 14, Amy's life took an unexpected turn when she became pregnant. Initially hesitant to share the news with her mother, she concealed her growing belly under loose clothing for over 5 months. Eventually, the pregnancy became difficult to hide any longer. After nearly 6 months, Amy found the courage to approach her mother. Breaking down in tears, she revealed her situation. "Mom, I don't want you to hate me," she tearfully confided. Although taken aback by the news, Gloria embraced her daughter with comforting words of support despite feeling overwhelmed and uncertain about what lay ahead. "I was stunned. I just couldn't believe it," Gloria recounted later. "I thought it was the worst thing that could happen in my life," she added, unaware of even more heart-wrenching events that were yet to unfold. Amy Widener's baby was fathered by Tony Abba, 20, who was a friend of her elder brother. Their relationship had been a well-kept secret. None of their family members were aware of their intimacy until Amy's pregnancy came to light. Gloria, Amy's mother, swiftly intervened. She prohibited any further contact between Amy and Tony. She insisted that Amy cut ties completely with the father of her unborn child, laying down strict conditions for her daughter's future interactions. On October 25, 1987, Amy Widener embraced motherhood by welcoming her daughter Emily into the world. Remarkably, Just 6 days after giving birth, Amy resumed her education. Now she juggled the responsibilities of being a new mother. Gloria Widner, recognizing the importance of education for her daughter's future, provided unwavering support to Amy. She often cared for Emily to facilitate Amy's schooling. Gloria also acknowledged Amy's need for a typical teenage life and allowed her time with friends. Amy's dedication to her studies never waned, even amidst the demands of motherhood. She continued to excel academically, earning praise from her teachers for her diligence and hard work. The Widner family adapted to the new addition by sharing the responsibilities of caring for Emily. Life seemed to be realigning on a positive path as years passed. Amy successfully navigated her challenges. However, just as they found their footing, a sudden turn of events altered everything. On November 13, 1989, 16-year-old Amy awoke with a severe sore throat and decided to stay home from school with her 2-year-old daughter Emily. When Gloria offered to take Emily to the nanny's house, Amy opted to keep her daughter with her. After the family shared breakfast, they dispersed for the day. Gloria headed to work, and Amy's siblings went off to school, leaving Amy and Emily at home alone. Concerned after no answer from multiple calls made at 9:30 a.m., and again hours later, Gloria asked a neighbor to check in on them. The neighbor's report of an unresponsive and unusually quiet house worried Gloria. So she left work and rushed home. Upon arrival, she found Emily sitting on the stairs. Receiving no answer to her calls for Amy prompted her venture upstairs. The scene in Amy's bedroom was tragic and shocking, a moment etched forever in memory. Amy lay lifeless and unclad on her bed, surrounded by a significant amount of blood. In a state of emergency, Gloria immediately dialed 911. Upon arrival, the police commenced a meticulous examination of the Widner residence. The scene initially suggested an attempted burglary, as stereo equipment and a graphic equalizer belonging to Amy's older brother John were missing. Also gone from Amy's room was a simple glass jar piggy bank containing around $50 saved for school. There were no signs of forced entry. The perpetrator might have entered through an unlocked back door, or possibly the front door, opened by Amy herself. Crucial evidence was found in Amy's room. There was bloody palm print on the bed linen and wall, along with several strands of body and head hair, presumably from the assailant. The medical examiner concluded that Amy Widner sustained a blow to the head with a sharp object. She was sexually assaulted and ultimately strangled. It's deeply unsettling that Emily, Amy's 2-year-old daughter, could have witnessed these harrowing events. Fortuitously, she was found unharmed. Recognizing any information Emily might provide as potentially valuable, police made efforts to communicate with her despite her young age of just over 2 years. They used finger puppets to create a more child-friendly environment and gently probed for details she could recall. During this interaction, Emily, energetically moving around, mentioned only that her mother seemed very angry that day. As part of the evidence collection process, police sectioned off and removed the portion of the wall bearing the assailant's bloody palm print. They also gathered the victim's clothing and bed linens from the crime scene to aid their investigation into this tragic case. In their pursuit for answers regarding Amy Widner's case, detectives initiated inquiries among her family, friends, and nearby residents. John Paul, Amy's 17-year-old brother, mentioned how the investigators initially suspected him during the interrogation. However, he had a reliable alibi, and no evidence linked him to the incident. Tony Abia, Amy's former boyfriend and Emily's father, was also interrogated. He expressed deep affection for Amy and denied any harmful intentions towards her. Tony had a solid alibi for the day of the crime. The police's attention was also drawn to Troy Jackson, who lived next to the Widners. He knew about the stereo system stolen on the day of the murder. Despite his denial of involvement and the absence of any bruises or scratches on his hands, Troy provided hair samples that did not match those found at the crime scene. After passing a polygraph test, suspicions against him were dropped. Besides these three, the police interviewed other acquaintances, neighbors, and classmates of Amy. Fingerprints and hair samples were taken from all of them. But, none fell under suspicion. Amy Widner's funeral was held shortly afterward, drawing a considerable crowd who wished to pay their respects. Her death was deeply felt within the community. Detectives attended the funeral too, carefully observing the attendees as part of their ongoing investigation. A particularly poignant memory was a cherished photograph of Amy where she wore her favorite white turtleneck vest with a floral design. It was in this beloved attire that Amy, a young girl whose life was tragically cut short, was laid to rest. In the aftermath of their tragic loss, the Widner family clung to hope that Amy's killer would be swiftly apprehended and brought to justice. Yet as days turned into weeks and then months, no suspects were identified. Following Amy's passing, Gloria Widner legally adopted her granddaughter Emily, stepping into the role of motherhood once again. The weight of grief and fear burdened Gloria. She was haunted by thoughts of the perpetrator and worried about her family's safety. She never left her daughters unattended at home and lived in a state of constant anxiety with the assailant still at large. Gloria even considered relocating to a new home for safety reasons. Financial constraints limited their options, leaving them to navigate these challenging times in their current residence. Amy's friends were also deeply affected by the tragedy, consumed by fear that the criminal might target them next. They requested their parents to fortify their homes, even boarding up windows with planks, a precautionary measure against a similar fate. One day, Gloria returned home expecting to find her younger daughters back from school. Upon entering, she was met with an unsettling silence. The house felt unusually empty. She noticed that the girls' outdoor shoes were in their usual spot. A surge of dreadful thoughts raced through her mind, apprehending another calamity with each step towards the upstairs. The distance felt increasingly vast. Standing at the threshold of their bedroom, Gloria steeled herself for what she might find. Upon entering, she discovered, much to her relief, that her daughters had merely fallen asleep. As time went on, Emily, Amy's daughter, matured. She was spared the memories of the tragic events surrounding her biological mother. Emily had no recollection of the police interrogation or being informed of her mother's demise. The detectives periodically revisited the Wagner family, inadvertently causing them to revisit the pain of that dreadful day. Gloria revealed that there came a time when this continual revisiting became too much to bear. She yearned for one thing: for the authorities to allow her family some peace and to cease reawakening memories that could not bring Amy back. 13 years after Amy Wagner's murder in 2002, an unexpected development arose in the case. The Indianapolis Police Department received a call from a 29-year-old man claiming to have had a dream where Amy communicated with him about her demise. Although he provided details about the murder, most of this information had already been disclosed in news reports. The police investigated this individual, who was 16 at the time of the incident, and resided across the street from Amy's home. His fingerprints and DNA were examined to determine any potential involvement, but no matches were found, leading to his release. While his call didn't contribute significant evidence, it prompted detectives to re-examine the cold case in 2002. The investigation re-engaged with some of Amy's friends and acquaintances, particularly those who had encountered legal issues over the intervening years. Despite renewed efforts, the investigation once again reached an impasse, leaving the case unsolved. In 2011, a Facebook group titled "Remembering Amy Ware" was established by Amy's friends, reigniting interest in her unsolved case. The detective responsible for the cold case, unfamiliar with Facebook, enlisted the help of his colleague, Detective Bill Carter, to print out information from the group. This task piqued Carter's interest in Amy Ware's case. Although his expertise was in non-homicide-related illegal activities, Carter felt compelled to explore the case files of Amy's murder during his free time. Carter delved deep into the 2-decade-old case. He scrutinized every detail in the file, re-examining evidence and reviewing school attendance records from the day of the murder. He also scrutinized the funeral attendance list. He inputted the case details into a database and identified overlooked leads, including several friends of Amy's brother who had never been interviewed by the police, nor had their DNA been collected. In his pursuit of new leads, Detective Carter reached out to the Were family and Amy's friends in 2011, seeking names of individuals who might possess information about the case. He initiated DNA collection from persons previously overlooked in the initial 1989 investigation following the crime. The police had canvassed the neighborhood where the Wers lived and documented residents' names. Amy had long-standing friends, and while she reiterated most of the previously known and investigated, she also mentioned an unfamiliar name to Detective Carter: Rodney Dink. In 2012, Detective Carter received authorization from the Cold Case Unit to formally take on Amy Wagner's case. His first step was to locate Rodney Dink to ascertain whether he could be a potential suspect. The Wagner family was quite familiar with Rodney, as he was a friend of Amy's older brother, John Paul. They spent time together engaging in activities like biking and fishing. When Carter inquired about Rodney with John Paul, he described him as a reserved individual who largely kept to himself and had never aroused suspicion. Carter visited the home of 40-year-old Rodney Dink, who resided with his mother near the Wideners. Rodney was employed at an auto parts store, had been divorced for some time, and had a grown son with whom he had minimal contact. Upon Carter's arrival at Rodney's residence, his mother greeted him and informed the detective that Rodney was at work. Carter left his business card requesting Rodney contact him upon his return. That evening, Rodney called Carter, who promptly requested a meeting to discuss Amy Wagner's murder case. Rodney consented to the meeting and allowed Carter to visit at his house. However, when Carter returned for the meeting, Rodney was nowhere to be found. Carter examined Rodney's criminal background and found that he had previous charges for assault in 1991 and theft in 1997. With Rodney's fingerprints already in the database, they were compared with the palm print found at the Wagner residence. This test aimed to either connect or exonerate Rodney from the crime. When the results came back, they confirmed a match between Rodney's prints and the bloody palm print at the crime scene. After 23 years, a suspect was finally identified. However, Rodney had vanished from his home, prompting an intensive search by the police. The breakthrough came when Rodney's credit card activity revealed a rented car with an OnStar tracking system. The detectives located the car in Indianapolis where Rodney was hiding. Rodney, while at a friend's house, was confronted by the police. Brandishing a knife and declaring his innocence, he ultimately injured himself during the encounter. He attempted to attack the officers but was subdued with a taser, handcuffed, and then taken to the hospital. During a 2-day hospital interrogation that was recorded on camera, Rodney confessed to Amy's murder. He initially claimed his intent had been burglary and had not anticipated Amy's presence due to her illness. Rodney recounted entering through a sliding glass door and being startled by Amy. In a panic, he hastily grabbed the nearest object and struck her on the head, which led to her death. As he recounted the incident over 2 days, Rodney frequently mentioned his vague recollection of the events of that day. He attributed this fogginess to the 23 years that had elapsed since the crime occurred. His account of his actions lacked precision. At one point, he even suggested he had visited the house with an acquaintance he referred to as Bag. However, Rodney struggled to recall clear details about this supposed accomplice and could not provide a description of their appearance. According to Rodney, Bag had initially kept watch outside before joining him inside, where they both confronted Amy. When questioned about Emily's presence during the incident, Rodney claimed he did not see her, nor was aware of her cries in the house, oblivious to the fact that she had been nearby throughout the ordeal. Throughout the interrogation, Rodney remained composed and polite, not exhibiting behavior typically associated with a murderer, possibly due to the passage of time since committing the crime. His DNA sample was taken, and as anticipated, it matched that found in 1989 on Amy Wagner's bedsheet and blanket. The disclosure of Rodney's guilt came as a profound shock to the Wagner family. They struggled to reconcile the image of the quiet, unassuming Rodney with his heinous act. Rodney wasn't just Amy's older brother, John Paul's friend and classmate. He also lived across the street and frequently visited their home. Remarkably, Rodney had even attended Amy's funeral, mourning with others and extending condolences to Gloria Wadner. Later, Detective Carter discovered Rodney's signature in the guest book at Amy's funeral. Upon revisiting the case, he found that Rodney's name was first mentioned in 2003 by Tony Abercrombie, Amy's former boyfriend and Emily's biological father, who pointed out Rodney's regular visits to the Wadner family. Carter deduced that back in 1989, for some unknown reason, Rodney Den had evaded suspicion entirely. He wasn't considered a suspect or even questioned at that time. In 2012, while investigating Rodney Dan's background further, detectives unearthed another grim detail. Rodney's biological son, Dylan Dank, was imprisoned for a crime committed in 2009. At just 16 years old, Dylan had fatally assaulted his birth mother, Mary McHenry. He claimed he acted out due to her abuse and insults, ultimately using a baseball bat to inflict fatal injuries. Tragically, Mary succumbed to her wounds. Dylan turned 17 just days after the incident. This eerie parallel, father and son committing significant crimes at almost similar ages, struck detectives as both chilling and peculiar. Despite having minimal involvement in Dylan's upbringing due to divorcing Mary McHenry early on, Rodney appeared at Dylan's trial in 2009 and agreed to a plea deal, resulting in a 20-year prison sentence. Dylan's anticipated release will be in 2029, when he turns 37 years old. In the ongoing investigation of Amy Widener's case, Rodney Dink initially maintained that he had an accomplice during the crime, a young man. In June 2013, merely 10 days before his trial was scheduled to commence, year-old Rodney recanted his previous statement. He admitted to acting alone in the murder of Amy, asserting that no one else was involved. As a result of this confession and the evidence against him, Rodney received a sentence of 65 years in prison. Following the resolution of Amy's case, the Wader family arranged a gathering with Detective Bill Carter. They commemorated the 24 years without Amy by releasing 24 balloons into the sky. The family expressed their gratitude for Detective Carter's pivotal role in the case. It was Carter who pinpointed Rodney Den as the perpetrator within just 12 days of delving into the case and brought the investigation to a close. In recognition of his outstanding work, Detective Bill Carter was honored with an award by the Indianapolis Police Department in January 2014. Despite an offer to join the Homicide Investigation Department, he chose to remain in his current role. Emily Ware, Amy's daughter, matured into adulthood. She graduated from the same high school her biological mother had attended before pursuing higher education at a university. Seeking broader opportunities, she relocated from Indianapolis to California. Gloria Ware, Amy's mother, openly shared her enduring grief and daily remembrance of her daughter. She continues to reside in the house where the tragedy unfolded. Amy's room, still adorned with her photographs, now welcomes Gloria's grandchildren during their holiday visits. This brings a new sense of joy and life to a space once marked by loss. In the early hours of August 2, 2015, precisely at 3 a.m., an urgent call was made to 911. Tom Martins, an older gentleman, reported in a frantic tone that his son-in-law, Jason Corbett, had assaulted his daughter, Molly. To protect her, Tom intervened and struck Jason on the head with a baseball bat. He mentioned Jason was bleeding heavily and might already be deceased. He urgently requested an ambulance to their location. Jason Corbett, a 39-year-old businessman from Limerick, Ireland, was known for his cheerful and kind personality. He had a twin brother named Wayne and a sister named Tracy. In 2003, at the age of 27, Jason married Margaret Fitzpatrick. They soon welcomed a son named Jack and a daughter named Sarah. Their family life appeared idyllic in Ireland until tragedy struck. In 2006, not long after Sarah's birth, Margaret experienced a severe asthma attack in the middle of the night. She woke Jason up, struggling to breathe. Despite Jason's efforts to help with medication and an inhaler, her condition deteriorated. In desperation, he called for an ambulance. However, Margaret sadly passed away en route to the hospital. At just 30 years old and serving as the director of a small packaging company in Ireland, Jason was left to raise their children, his 2-year-old son and 3-month-old daughter, alone. His friends noted his profound sadness and struggle following this loss. A year after Margaret's passing, Jason sought help with childcare and housekeeping duties. This led him to hire Molly Martins, a 25-year-old American woman. Molly arrived in Ireland from the United States in March 2008. A longtime friend of Jason's met her at the airport, but immediately harbored reservations about her suitability for the role of nanny and housekeeper. Molly appeared much younger than her age suggested, and had a rather flamboyant style, sporting a bright coat with a fur collar, along with cowboy boots and heavy makeup. To this friend, she seemed more like someone out of theater than fitting for such significant responsibilities. Molly Martins grew up in Knoxville, Tennessee. She left Clemson University and decided to start afresh in Ireland. Molly quickly formed a strong bond with Jason's son and daughter, showing tenderness and care. Soon, Jason's close friends noticed a change. He was gradually healing after the loss of his first wife, appearing more lively and engaged. Feelings blossomed between Jason and Molly, leading to a romantic relationship. The couple, along with Jack and Sarah, enjoyed a vacation together. They had a wonderful time, growing closer while planning their future life. 2 years later, on Valentine's Day 2010, Jason invited Molly to a cafe where he proposed with a ring. Overjoyed, Molly began planning their wedding in America. She persuaded Jason to move to her home country, and he agreed. In 2011, Jason sold his house and relocated his job to the United States. The family settled in Davidson County, North Carolina, where Jason and Molly married in a ceremony attended by many relatives and friends from both America and Ireland. After their marriage, Molly worked as a swimming instructor, but mainly focused on caring for Jack and Sarah. Meanwhile, Jason held a managerial position in the United States. Initially happy, their marital relationship eventually began to deteriorate. This growing tension peaked on August 1st, 2015, when Molly's parents, Tom and Sharon Martins, visited the Corbett family's home at around 11 p.m. Jason welcomed them in the driveway and helped with their luggage. Tom brought a baseball bat as a gift for Jack, Jason's son, who was out at a party with friends at the time. That evening, Jason, Molly, her parents, and Sarah had dinner together. They opted for pizza. Jack returned home close to midnight. However, Tom decided not to give him the baseball bat at such an hour, but intended to present it later instead. The following morning, after 11 p.m., the family retired for the night. Molly and Jason slept in the master bedroom on the first floor, with the children, Jack and Sarah, in adjacent rooms. Molly's parents were accommodated in the guest room on the second floor. In the early of August 2nd, around 3 a.m., Tom Martins called 911. He claimed that his son-in-law, Jason, had attacked Molly and that he had struck Jason with a baseball bat in response. Tom urgently requested assistance, unsure of Jason's condition, who lay unconscious and bleeding. The 911 dispatcher guided Tom and Molly through cardiopulmonary resuscitation procedures in an effort to revive Jason before medical help arrived. When police and ambulance services arrived 10 minutes later, they found Molly outside near a car, appearing distraught and in shock, but without actual tears. Inside, they discovered the lifeless body of 39-year-old Jason Corbett in the main bedroom. Blood spattered across the bed, walls and floor. Both Tom's and Molly's clothing bore bloodstains while blood marked Jason's body. Near Jason lay a baseball bat and a large cobblestone, both with traces of blood, as well as an overturned lamp. Throughout this ordeal, Jack and Sarah remained asleep in their rooms. Tom and Molly did not deny their involvement in Jason's death, asserting it was self-defense. They were taken to the station for questioning. At the police station, 66-year-old Tom Martins, an FBI veteran with 30 years of experience, stated that his son-in-law was insane and constantly tormented his daughter. According to Tom, Jason was drunk that evening. Everyone went to bed, but Tom woke up at night because he heard screams and loud voices on the first floor of the house. He jumped out of bed, grabbed a baseball bat, and ran downstairs. Tom entered the main bedroom and saw Jason holding Molly by the throat with both hands. He yelled at Jason to let her go, to which Jason turned to him and said he would kill her. Tom claimed his protective instincts kicked in instantly, so he hit Jason with the baseball bat, but noted that their forces were unequal. Jason didn't appear to feel the blow as he tried to drag Molly into the bathroom and shut the door. However, Tom intervened. Jason pushed the elderly man, making him fall and causing his glasses to fly off. Tom confessed that at that moment, he believed he was going to be. Jason spotted the bat on the floor and reached for it. At that point, Molly grabbed a stone and shouted, "Don't touch my dad." Then, she struck her husband on the head with all her might. Following that, Tom seized the baseball bat and began hitting Jason until he fell to the floor. During questioning, 32-year-old Molly Corbett recounted the same story to investigators. She explained that her daughter Sarah woke up during the night screaming from night terrors. This woke Jason, who became very angry and lashed out at his wife. He started strangling her, threatening to kill her. Her father came to Molly's aid. Molly admitted hitting her husband on the head with a heavy stone to save her father. When asked where she got the stone, Molly replied that it had been on her bedside table. They had planned to paint cobblestones with their children for decorating flower beds with colorful stones. The woman couldn't recall how many times she hit her husband. She only mentioned it was a desperate fight for survival. Midway through the interrogation, Molly expressed enduring pain from being choked by her husband. Investigators photographed her neck, which bore a red mark in its center. Later, police compared these photos with those taken during her arrest and found no red marks on Molly's neck at detention time. She confessed that while there had been a fight between herself and her husband the day before the tragedy, it was then when Jason grabbed her by the arms and neck. Throughout questioning, she frequently complained of throat pain. Both Tom and Molly claimed in unison that Jason Corbett had been treating his wife brutally. However, his family provided conflicting accounts. Tracy Lynch, Jason Corbett's sister, shared insights about what she described as an unusual relationship between them. Dynamics observed during Jason's wedding to Molly indicated Molly exerted considerable control over Jason, often becoming upset if things didn't align with her expectations. Her reluctance to interact with Jason's visiting relatives raised further concerns. Additional alarm was added by the revelation of one of Molly's friends. This friend stated that Molly told everyone she had been friends with Jason's first wife, Margaret, until Margaret died of cancer. This contradicted family reports, as everyone knew she had died of an asthma attack. Despite these red flags and attempts by Jason's family and friends to dissuade him from marrying Molly due to her odd behavior, the wedding proceeded. This event marked the beginning of a complicated and troubled union. Initially, Molly and Jason Corbett's marriage appeared harmonious. Molly formed a close bond with Jason's children, Jack and Sarah, treating them as her own. However, as their first wedding anniversary approached in 2012, Jason expressed a desire to return to Ireland, his homeland, citing unhappiness in a foreign country. This disclosure marked the beginning of a decline in the couple's relationship. Despite Jack and Sarah referring to Molly as their mother, Jason resisted Molly's intentions to legally adopt them. He wanted to preserve the memory of their biological mother. During this period, Molly's behavior started to change noticeably. Jason grew increasingly concerned about her mental well-being, suspecting she might have a psychological disorder. He observed a stark contrast between her initially sweet demeanor and subsequent behavior, which he perceived as more manipulative and controlling. Molly began isolating Jason from his family, often curtailing his phone conversations with them to mere seconds. Following the untimely death of his first wife, Jason Corbett designated his sister, Tracy Lynch, as the legal guardian for his children, Jack and Sarah. In the event of his own demise, Tracy was well aware that if something to Jason, Molly would strongly contest the custody of the children. When Jason passed away, Tracy promptly traveled to North Carolina to file for custody, anticipating a legal battle with Molly, who also sought custody rights. During their strained marriage, Molly had sought legal counsel to understand her rights over Jason's children in the event of a divorce. Her lawyer advised her to document their disputes and accumulate incriminating evidence against Jason. Consequently, Molly began secretly recording their conversations. In these recordings, Molly appeared disengaged, often ignoring Jason's repeated questions while he escalated his voice. A close friend of Molly's disclosed that although Molly rarely discussed her marital issues, she began to express negative sentiments about Jason following his death. Molly confided in her friend that Jason was domineering and abusive. She accused him of forcing her into intimate acts, verbally abusing her, and progressively worsening in his treatment towards her. Despite these allegations, Molly did not report these incidents to the authorities. 4 days after Jason Corbett's tragic demise, his children Jack and Sarah, aged 10 and 8, were interviewed by a child welfare professional. In this interview, they shared observations about the relationship between their parents. Notably, they mentioned their mother Molly being cautious about not waking their father Jason, fearing it might anger him. Jack specifically talked about a cobblestone kept on the bedside table. He clarified that they had brought the stone inside due to rain, intending to decorate it later. Regarding their parents' interactions, both Jack and Sarah described incidents where they witnessed physical altercations initiated by their father against Molly. They recounted occasions where Jason physically assaulted Molly, including hitting and pushing her, and frequently snapping at her over minor issues. Subsequent to these revelations, Jack and Sarah were temporarily placed under the care of their biological relatives. Aunt Tracy Lynch, who had traveled from Ireland, stayed in a North Carolina hotel during the unfolding custody battle. By the time Jason Corbett's autopsy was completed, it revealed the grim details of his demise. The cause of death was a traumatic brain injury. Jason had suffered approximately 12 strikes to the head with both a baseball bat and a brick. These blows were concentrated on the same area, leading to his scalp being severely torn from his skull and his skull itself being fractured. Notably, the medical examiner concluded that at least one of these strikes was inflicted after Jason had already passed away. The toxicology report provided additional insights. It indicated that Jason's blood contained slightly higher than normal levels of alcohol. Additionally, traces of trazodone, an antidepressant medication commonly prescribed for insomnia, were also found in his system. Jason Corbett was laid to rest in his hometown Limerick, Ireland, alongside his first wife, Margaret. Their shared tombstone is adorned with a wedding photograph, serving as a poignant reminder of their lives and the bond they shared. 16 days after Jason Corbett's passing, his sister Tracy Lynch took his children Jack and Sarah to Ireland, separating them from their stepmother Molly. Molly was left in a state of shock and despair upon discovering that Jack and Sarah had been taken to another country. She attempted to reach out to them through phone calls and social media posts, hoping these messages would somehow reach the children. Meanwhile, Molly and Tom consistently maintained that their actions against Jason were in self-defense. However, the investigation into Jason's death was ongoing. Tracy Lynch believed in a different motive. She speculated that Molly was aware of Jason's plans to leave her and take their children with him. Tracy surmised that on the night of the incident, Jason had informed Molly of his decision. Out of fear and loneliness, Molly reacted violently. In Ireland, Jack and Sarah received psychological support and gradually adapted to their new environment 9 months after their father's tragic demise. They admitted they had been coerced into lying about the alleged domestic violence at home. They revealed that Molly had manipulated them into fabricating stories about their father's behavior, threatening them with the loss of contact with her if they refused to comply. Contrary to their earlier statements, the children clarified that their father had never been abusive toward Molly. During the course of the inquiry, investigators discovered Molly Corbett's past connection with her ex-partner, Keith Magan. He provided several insightful details regarding her earlier life. Keith and Molly initially connected through a dating website, quickly falling for each other at their first meeting. They moved in together just 6 weeks later. Keith acknowledged Molly's independent spirit, jovial nature, and unique personality. However, she eventually disclosed her struggle with bipolar disorder to him. Keith wasn't overly worried about this revelation since Molly was on medication and generally stable, except for occasional shifts in behavior when she missed her doses. She wasn't violent or prone to outbursts, but would insist on not letting Keith leave during disputes. Molly often spent extended periods in the bathtub, then sat on the cold floor weeping. Despite these challenges, they continued their lives together without plans for children. Molly informed Keith she was on contraceptives, but unexpectedly declared they were expecting a child. At this point, Keith, the family's sole earner, faced financial strain and felt unprepared for parenthood. His discovery of an unopened pack of contraceptives in Molly's wardrobe led him to realize her deceit. Yet Keith, being an honorable man, proposed to Molly, who accepted joyfully. Undeterred by her health issues, she maintained her regimen of antidepressants and other medications, sometimes taking up to 16 pills daily, which caused Keith concern for their unborn child's well-being. Molly once dreamt of losing the baby, and tragically, the following day, the hospital confirmed the fetus's demise. This incident further strained their relationship. Molly plunged into profound mourning and was diagnosed with severe depression, as documented in her medical records. Her parents began supporting her more fervently and, simultaneously, developed a disdainful view of Keith, casting him as the antagonist. In early 2008, Molly informed her fiancé of her plan to go to Europe to find work as a nanny or house assistant. By March, she packed her belongings and left the apartment she had been renting with her fiancé. 10 days later, Molly called Keith to tell him she was in Ireland, had found a job, and everything was fine. From that point on, they never spoke or saw each other again. Keith Magan first heard from a North Carolina detective in October 2015 via email. Through this communication, he discovered the unfortunate events that had unfolded. It was revealed that Molly had kept her significant relationship engagement and subsequent departure to another country a secret from everyone. Keith admitted that upon viewing an interview featuring Tom and Molly, in which they portrayed the late Justin Corbett as malevolent and dreadful, he found their story unconvincing and, moreover, perceived their expressions as merely facades. In January 2016, half a year following Jason's demise, Tom and Molly were unexpectedly indicted for second-degree murder. By July 2017, 2 years since the incident, the father and daughter duo faced their trial together. They maintained their stance of having acted in self-defense in Jason's killing. During the trial, Tom Martin claimed his actions were what any true father would do: protect his daughter. He believed it was a life-or-death situation and did all he could to safeguard both Molly and himself. Tom confessed he was the one who struck Jason with a bat, ceasing only when he felt sure Jason no longer posed a threat. The prosecution contended in court that the severity of the blows indicated deep-seated animosity, not mere self-defense. An expert analyzing the bloodstains deduced that some strikes were dealt when Jason's head was 30 to 50 centimeters off the ground, strongly suggesting Tom continued to strike him even when he was down and no threat. Bloodstains on Molly's pajama bottom suggested she was close to Jason during these blows. A long, light-colored hair, possibly Molly's, was found in John's hand, but it wasn't tested. The autopsy revealed defensive wounds on John's left hand, but none on his right. This is significant because he might have used his right hand to grab Molly by the throat. During the trial, Lieutenant Frank Young, assigned to document injuries on Tom and Molly the night of the incident, took the stand. He recalled noticing self-inflicted marks on Molly's neck. Lieutenant Young repeatedly told her to stop and noted that except for dried blood on her cheek, forehead, and hair, she had no other injuries. Similarly, Tom had no injuries on the front of his shirt, but blood was found on his watch dial and under his fingernails. His glasses remained intact. paramedic Amanda Hackworth also testified. When she arrived at the scene and examined Jason's body, she found his torso already cold with patches of dried blood. This contradicted Molly's claim that they had immediately called 911 after Jason lost consciousness and collapsed. The trial further revealed that Jason Corbett had a life insurance policy, naming Molly as the beneficiary. It was also disclosed that Jason often sent money to Molly's parents during his lifetime. For instance, in 2011, he sent $50,000 to Tom, supposedly for wedding expenses. A neighbor came forward during the trial, recounting how he and Jason spent an evening together drinking beer from about 3:30 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. The neighbor described Jason as very relaxed and noted Jason's calm interactions with his in-laws when they arrived at the Corbett residence. He witnessed Tom and his wife arriving with Jason, welcoming them and helping carry heavy bags from their car into the house. Finally, a nurse testified about her observations of the couple before this incident occurred. The tragic event unfolded when it was reported that trazodone had been prescribed to Molly a few days before the incident on July 30, 2015. Jason had visited the hospital 2 weeks prior to his passing, expressing concerns about frequent dizziness, tension, and unprovoked anger. After 9 days filled with witness accounts, debates, and distressing crime scene photographs, the jury reached a verdict in merely 3 hours. Molly Corbett and her father, Tom Martins, were convicted of second-degree murder and received sentences of 20 and 25 years in prison, respectively. Upon hearing the verdict, Molly turned to her mother with regret in her voice, stating, "I'm so sorry, but I shouldn't have let him kill me." While it seemed justice had been served for the convicted individuals, the case was far from over. Just an hour after the jury delivered their verdict, a juror disclosed outside the courthouse that discussions about Jason Corbett's case occurred prior to the formal deliberation period. This was a significant breach of legal protocol. In light of this revelation, the defense swiftly submitted a request to overturn the conviction due to juror misconduct. However, this motion was dismissed by the trial court judge. A year later, the defense approached the appellate court, highlighting several investigative errors. One issue raised concerned blood stains on Tom Martin's shorts. The prosecution had suggested these stains belonged to Jason's blood, implying Tom stood over Jason during the assault, but they were never actually tested. The prosecutor argued it was impractical and unnecessary to test every single blood spot. The defense also underscored initial statements made by Jack and Sarah. They initially claimed their father was abusive towards them. Molly and expressed fear of him. The defense argued that the siblings' late attractions, were they to lying, were influenced by professionals, assuring them to change their testimony. On 4th, 2020, the North Carolina Court of Appeals determined Tom Martins and Molly Corbett should be granted a new trial. This decision was later upheld by the Supreme Court of North Carolina. Subsequently, both were released on a $200,000 bond. While awaiting the retrial, they were required to hand over their passports and were forbidden from making any contact with Jack and Sarah. Currently, Jason Corbett's case has been moved to Forsyth County, North Carolina, for additional legal proceedings, marking a minor triumph for Tom and Molly. Jason's children, Jack and Sarah, are now residing with their biological aunt in Ireland. Sarah, aged 16, has authored a series of books aimed at helping others deal with the loss of parents. Tracy Lynch, Jason's sister, has also penned a book about her brother during these years of legal battles. She aims to share the kindness and decency of Jason Corbett with the world. A notable excerpt from Tracy's book reads, "Deep down, I smile when I realize that Jason has finally returned. Hello again, true crime fans. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Rebecca Gould. Rebecca Gould was born on April 28, 1982, in the small town of Melbourne, Kansas, USA, to parents who were going through a divorce. Rebecca, along with her 3 sisters, was raised by her mother but still maintained a relationship with her father. The Gould sisters have a close relationship. They shared a difficult childhood, which brought them closer together. Of the sisters, Rebecca and her youngest sister, Danielle, are the closest. In search of a better life and the opportunity to pursue a university education, Rebecca decided to leave her hometown and move to Fayetteville, Arkansas. There, she enrolled in a community college and worked part-time. Danielle also moved to Fayetteville to live with her sister. She helped Rebecca take care of the family and pursue her dream of earning a university degree. One day, during a trip back to her hometown, Rebecca met Casey, whom she noticed and felt something different about. They started dating and gradually fell in love. Although they lived far apart, she and Casey shared beautiful moments together. The relationship between Rebecca and Casey grew stronger. On the morning of September 20th, 2004, Rebecca was scheduled to go to Melbourne to pick Casey up from work at a fast food restaurant. After buying coffee and sandwiches, she decided to go back to the mobile home and take a nap before returning to Fayetteville. Meanwhile, Danielle was at Casey's house waiting for Rebecca to pick her up. Rebecca and Danielle had planned for Rebecca to pick Danielle up at noon. However, Danielle tried calling and texting Rebecca but was unable to reach her sister. Danielle then decided to call Rebecca's friends but still did not receive any news. Danielle became increasingly worried. Danielle decided to go to the police station to report Rebecca missing. The police began investigating Rebecca's disappearance by questioning potential witnesses. The first person they chose to question was Casey, the last person to see Rebecca alive. The detectives went to the restaurant where Casey worked and asked him about Rebecca. Casey said that he had slept over at a friend's house and went straight to work the next morning without seeing Rebecca as usual. He assumed Rebecca had left town with Danielle some time ago. Even though Casey had an alibi, the police still felt suspicious of him. They found it strange that he had left his dog alone at home to spend the night at a friend's house. Furthermore, why would he decide to sleep over at a friend's house the night before his girlfriend left? This was one inconsistency in Casey's story that the police noticed. The police thoroughly searched the mobile home where Casey lived and where Rebecca was last seen. They detected a lingering smell of bleach, apparently used to cover up some sort of incident. Rebecca's belongings were still in place, but the bed was in disarray and the sheets were rumpled. One of them showed blood stains. Forensic analysis confirmed that the blood was Rebecca's. Casey immediately became a suspect. However, he had a solid alibi. Several witnesses had seen Rebecca personally driving him to work on Monday morning, and from 8:30 to 4:30, Casey was consistently present at the restaurant. The investigation hit a dead end until a call from a passerby. A week later, a passerby discovered the body of a young girl, brutally mutilated and dumped at the bottom of a shallow ravine outside the city. Police searched the area thoroughly for traces and physical evidence. It was not difficult to identify the murdered girl as Rebecca Gould. She was wearing the same t-shirt and underwear she had been last seen in alive. An autopsy later revealed that her death had occurred about 7 days earlier, on the same Monday, September 20th, when Casey had spent the night at a friend's house. Investigators found signs of brutal beatings on Rebecca's body, including multiple bruises, a broken nose, and a fractured skull. Of particular note were 2 blunt force injuries to the head. These were clearly fatal. The shape of these injuries matched the shape of the missing leg from the piano in Casey's mobile home. Police believed it could have been used as a murder weapon, but they were unable to find it. The details of Rebecca's autopsy revealed the horrific brutality of her killer. In addition to the injuries to her head and neck, she also showed signs of strangulation. A broken hyoid bone indicated a prolonged and brutal strangulation. At the same time, there were no signs of resistance or self-defense, which suggested that the attacker may have been someone she knew and who attacked her from behind. The lack of signs of sexual violence also suggested that rape was not the motive for the murder. Detectives continued to investigate Casey, Rebecca's boyfriend. Several witnesses recalled that Rebecca had talked about wanting to break up with Casey because she was fed up with his constant arguments and controlling behavior. Casey's excessive possessiveness became apparent, especially after Rebecca moved to another city to study. However, Casey's alibi forced the police to look for other leads and suspects. Over time, numerous people connected to Rebecca were investigated, but to no avail. The murder of Rebecca Gould went cold. But in the late 2010s, a surprising breakthrough occurred. A podcast series dedicated to Rebecca's murder caught the attention of a man who claimed to have valuable information about the case. The anonymous witness spoke of a confession he had heard, in which he said he had worked with Casey, the victim's boyfriend, years earlier. At one point, after a few drinks, Casey blurted out that he had killed Rebecca. The witness said that Casey confessed to the crime when he was drunk. However, what was suspicious was that the witness had remained silent for many years and only spoke up when his relationship with Casey became strained. Investigators initially viewed the witness's testimony with skepticism. They suspected that the man's testimony was just a way to get revenge and frame Casey. However, they could not dismiss the testimony either. They decided to continue investigating and look for more evidence. After more than a month of investigation, the detectives still had not found enough evidence to charge Casey. However, they felt that the solution was somewhere nearby. They decided to focus on people related to Casey. Particular attention was paid to William Miller, Casey's cousin, who had arrived in town before the murders. At first, William seemed like a minor character, but as the detectives reconstructed the events, his role in the case began to become clearer. William had left the United States after the murder and moved to the Philippines. This made the detectives suspicious. However, since the Philippines did not have an extradition treaty with the United States, interrogating William became impossible. The detectives could only hope that William would return to the United States and come to their attention. Meanwhile, they found some information on social media. William had joined a discussion group about the case and started commenting on posts. He described the area where the mutilated body was found with surprising accuracy. William's behavior raised suspicions. The detectives felt that they were getting closer to solving the case, but they still needed to find more evidence to be able to charge William. Why would someone who had lived on the other side of the world for years suddenly become so absorbed in the details of a tragedy that happened so long ago? Moreover, William's accurate description of the details of the case is almost astonishing. William Miller found his way back to the United States 16 years after Rebecca Gould's disappearance. Investigators finally had the opportunity to ask him some important questions. The police had previously tried to contact him because of a tip from the community. They suspected that he might have a connection to Rebecca. Investigators began by asking him about his life, especially his time in the Philippines. William made no secret of the fact that he was wealthy. He owned a spacious farm with a family and animals. During the conversation, he also talked about his relationship with Casey. He denied seeing Casey the night before Rebecca disappeared, but he also accidentally revealed that he witnessed an argument between Casey and Rebecca. Investigators felt that he had important information that he could not share because of legal restrictions. William reluctantly added that he never saw Rebecca again, dead or alive. This statement became an important clue for the police, as they realized that information about Rebecca's death had not been made public, making William's knowledge suspicious. Investigators decided to employ a trick to test William. They brought photos of William's car taken in 2004 into the interrogation room and claimed that there was blood on the gas pedal, matching Rebecca Gould's. Upon hearing this, William became nervous and began to fumble his testimony. He gave several implausible versions of events. including seeing a stranger in a white van near Casey's mobile home and accidentally witnessing a robbery. These bizarre stories only reinforced the impression that William had something to hide. Finally, William announced he was ready to tell the whole truth. He recounted that on the morning of September 20th, 2004, he had gone hunting and stopped by Casey's mobile home to borrow a cell phone. Rebecca, who was inside, sensed no danger and opened the door for William. William suddenly lunged at Rebecca, knocking her to the ground, and began beating her with his fists and random objects. He took a broken piano leg and repeatedly struck the defenseless Rebecca over the head. To ensure she was dead, William strangled her with a pair of tights he found in the room. After killing Rebecca, William wrapped her body in a suitcase, mopped the bloody floor, stuffed the blankets and sheets in the washing machine, and turned the mattress upside down to hide the evidence. He took Rebecca's body out of town and threw it into the nearest ravine. Investigators listening to this bizarre confession were haunted by a simple question: why? What drove this seemingly respectable family man to commit such a terrible crime? William swore he had no intention of raping Rebecca and that there was no romantic or sexual relationship between them. He had not robbed her and had no personal grievances or grudges. The reason, he said, was a spontaneous rage at the weakness he sensed in Rebecca. Rebecca had not said anything offensive or done anything wrong. She was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. For years, William Miller had boasted about his crimes and taunted the police. Joining the online group became a game for him, a chance to prove his superiority over the law once again. However, was Rebecca Gould Williams' only victim? This became the central question for the detectives. In order to find out more information, they resorted to a ruse. They thought this could help them discover the truth. When they told William that they knew of other murders with a method similar to Rebecca's, William began to cry and beg for mercy. He then revealed a series of new details about his crimes, which horrified the detectives. According to William, he was not just a lone killer but a true maniac. At least 5 lives were lost at his hands. The victims were mostly young women, including prostitutes and hitchhikers. William would pick them up on the highway, lure them to deserted places, and then brutally murder them. William did not rape these women. Instead, he derived pleasure from the killing process itself. He watched the life fade from the eyes of his captives, savoring their terror and despair. Then, he would strangle them with their clothes. The detectives listened attentively to William's confession, feeling horrified. They realized that they had encountered a living serial killer, which could help them solve many cases. However, the detectives also questioned the authenticity of William's confession. To verify the information, they asked William to provide more details about the victims and where they were buried. William provided some information, but it was not detailed enough. He gave some descriptions of the victims, but did not provide specific information about the locations or dates of the murders. In the end, the detectives relied on a rough map that William had marked with some of the possible locations where the victims' remains might be found. William's testimony was still valuable. The detectives knew that they had months, if not years, of hard work and careful examination ahead. They would have to search for missing bodies, compare DNA, and identify the victims. The most important thing was that William would eventually go to prison and never be able to hurt anyone again. William had revealed too many details that only the killer would know. His testimony matched the autopsy results and the circumstances of the crime scene perfectly. In November 2022, more than 5 years after William Miller was arrested, the case finally came to a close. William was charged with the premeditated murder of Rebecca Gould. However, investigators did not have enough evidence to charge him with other crimes. The court decided to focus on the 16-year-old murder case. The prosecutor argued that a life sentence was appropriate for William. They believed that he was no longer a human being but a killer who posed a direct threat to society. The prosecutor believed that if William were released, even for a day, he would surely commit more crimes. In contrast to the prosecutor, William's lawyers emphasized that he was not responsible for his actions because of his mental illness. They urged the jury to sympathize with their client and allow him to be treated in an appropriate psychiatric facility. In the end, the court convicted William Miller of first-degree murder. He was sentenced to 40 years in prison, with the possibility of parole in 25 years. If William were released, he would be 72 years old. The verdict shocked the people of Melbourne. Many protested that the sentence was too lenient. In their view, a person who committed such a crime did not deserve parole. Some argued that the investigation had watered down the crime and weakened the case to avoid affecting the clearance rate. Ultimately, William's conviction automatically cleared Casey, who many townspeople considered the real killer. Despite the skepticism and outrage, the fact remains that one of the most famous and mysterious murders in Melbourne's history has finally been solved. The real killer, a serial killer and psychopath, was imprisoned, not for life, but long enough to protect society from further victims. While not all the mysteries were solved, Rebecca's family finally knew the truth. They could begin to heal their emotional wounds. Months have passed since William Miller's arrest, and life in Melbourne is slowly returning to normal. Rebecca Gould's family is trying to come to terms with their grief. Her mother has found the strength to visit her daughter's grave for the first time in years. Her father has also opened her childhood toys and photo albums, which have been hidden in the attic for a long time. Rebecca's sisters have grown up and are trying to make up for lost time, calling each other regularly to share their grief. Rebecca's best friend, Casey, has decided to stay in Melbourne. He feels he must prove that he can build a new life despite the pain and loss he has experienced. He rarely visits the old mobile home, which holds so many painful memories. But when he gets the chance, he brings white roses to the door, Rebecca's favorite flower. William Miller, who caused pain to Rebecca's family, seems to have accepted his fate in prison. He behaves quietly, trying not to attract undue attention. He willingly communicates with a psychiatrist and takes prescribed medication. However, from time to time, a strange smile flashes across his face, as if reflecting something dark that has long been hidden under a mask of kindness. This story is a testament to the inevitability of justice. Sometimes it seems that evil is winning and criminals are getting away with it, but in reality, it is not. Sooner or later, punishment comes to all those who have crossed the line of humanity, and when it does, there is no turning back, only bitterness, loneliness, and the burden of guilt to carry to the end. Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Valerie Reyes. Valerie Reyes is a 24-year-old girl. She grew up in a loving family in the suburbs of New York. Valerie has 3 younger brothers. Valerie is cheerful, sociable, and friendly. Valerie is very close to her mother. The two share their private secrets and often discuss everything like two best friends. Valerie has many different talents, including drawing and singing. However, her true passion is to become a professional tattoo artist. With the guidance of her brother, who has experience in this field, Valerie learned and developed her skills. She dreams of opening a tattoo shop with her brother, where they can turn their creative ideas into reality. During this time, Valerie works part-time at a small, cozy bookstore. Valerie's life took a major turn in January 2018. That's when she met Javier da Silva, a 26-year-old Venezuelan man who had just moved to New York on a popular dating site. Javier told a touching story about how he had to flee his country in crisis to save his life. Because of this, he was unable to complete his university studies. Currently, Javier is working hard in a restaurant to build a new life in a foreign country. Valerie felt sympathy for him and they started a romantic relationship after a few dates. However, the relationship developed too quickly and only lasted about 3 months. Javier mentioned marriage, which scared Valerie because she was not ready. After feeling that everything was moving too fast, Valerie decided to end the relationship. Javier initially made a good impression on Valerie's family because he seemed to care about her and wanted the best for her. However, when Valerie expressed her desire to break up, Javier's behavior changed. He refused to accept the end of the relationship. He sent dozens of messages a day, begging Valerie to continue the relationship. In September 2018, Javier called Valerie. He said he had used her bank card to pay for an online purchase and wanted to meet Valerie to return the money. Valerie immediately sensed something was wrong and suspected that it was just an excuse to meet. Valerie then confided in a friend and asked the friend to talk to Javier so that he would stop bothering her. After the conversation, Javier stopped calling and texting. Valerie felt relieved and could finally return to her normal life with small joys and exciting plans for the future. However, Valerie did not know that the worst was yet to come. On January 24, 2019, Javier, whom Valerie had broken up with long ago and had not kept in touch with, wrote to an acquaintance of Valerie. In the letter, Javier claimed that he had caught Valerie in bed with another man. This information surprised and angered Valerie because she knew it was not true. January 27, after her shift at the bookstore, Valerie returned home and called her mother Ana Reyes in a state of panic. She cried and screamed into the phone that someone wanted to kill her. Valerie had been worried for days and felt that someone was following her. Valerie was so distressed that she could only cry into. After a while of talking to her mother, Valerie seemed to feel a little better. Before going to bed, Valerie texted her mother that she had calmed down and was ready to go to bed. Valerie's family became worried when she did not show up for dinner on January 29th. They kept calling her, but did not receive any answer. This made the family feel scared and uneasy. After waiting for a long time, the family decided to seek help from the police. On January 30th, they went to the police and filed a missing persons report for Valerie. The police immediately began investigating the case and began searching Valerie's apartment, but found no significant clues. There were no signs of a struggle or kidnapping. There were only small blood stains on the pillowcase in the bathroom, but the police thought it could be a simple injury. The police decided to look for Valerie and contacted her mobile operator. They discovered that Valerie's phone had been switched to airplane mode on the night of January 28 at around 3 a.m. Since then, the phone had not been turned on. This made the police and Valerie's family even more worried. But the most alarming fact was that someone had accessed Valerie's cloud storage and carefully studied all her photos, videos, and messages. Another worrying detail was that at 5 a.m. on January 29th, just 2 hours after the phone was turned off, someone had withdrawn $1,000 from Valerie's bank account. Surveillance cameras captured a man driving a black Honda to the ATM, quickly taking the money and disappearing. When the license plate was checked, police quickly determined that the car belonged to Javier, Valerie's ex-boyfriend. He was immediately placed on the list of prime suspects. During a search of Javier's home, no evidence was found relating to Valerie's disappearance. However, surveillance camera footage showed that on the evening of January 28, Javier left the house in a black Honda and went to Valerie's residence. Police checked Valerie's phone and found that there had been no calls or messages from Javier in recent months. This indicated that Valerie had not invited Javier to visit or meet. After Valerie went missing, Javier turned off his phone, so his movements could not be tracked. However, at 6 a.m., his cell phone briefly became active near Harrison, Connecticut. At 7:30 a.m., the phone was found in Greenwich. Javier returned home to Queens at 9:43 a.m., as confirmed by nearby cameras. Police later found that Javier had posted an old photo of them on Instagram the night before Valerie went missing. His posting of this photo could have been to let people know that they were still together, or it could have been some kind of secret sign. While the police were investigating Valerie's disappearance, Valerie's family and friends continued to search for her. They posted flyers with Valerie's picture and checked all of Valerie's usual haunts. A week passed in anxiety, with sleepless nights and exhausting searches. But still no results. On February 5th, highway workers saw a red suitcase on the side of the road. When they opened the suitcase, they saw a horrifying scene. Inside the suitcase was the body of a young woman. Her hands and feet were tied tightly with rope, her mouth was sealed with a thick layer of tape. Her thin shirt was torn, her jeans were torn and dirty. The girl was not wearing shoes. People noticed a terrible wound on her head. They immediately called the police to report the incident. The police arrived at the scene. Through tests, they quickly identified the victim as Valerie Reyes. Valerie's parents received news about their daughter. During the autopsy, the gruesome details of the murder were revealed. Before her death, Valerie had been severely beaten in the head with a blunt object, and then, while still alive, she had been stuffed into a suitcase and left to die. The evidence that Javier Dilva was involved in the murder was that Valerie's bank card was found in his wallet. During questioning, Javier gave a surprising explanation. Javier claimed that he had found Valerie's bank card and ID card at the bar. The police presented all the evidence they had gathered, including surveillance camera footage, details of his car, and the movements of his phone on the night of the incident. The police told Javier that they knew he was at Valerie's house on the night of the incident. Javier later changed his story. Javier admitted that he had been drinking too much that night and might have been at Valerie's house, but he didn't know everything. When the police showed him a photo of Valerie's body in a suitcase, Javier was shocked and cried. JV tried to justify his actions. According to his account, Javier went to Valerie's house that night after she invited him. They had sex, but during sex, Valerie collapsed to the floor and lost consciousness. Javier claimed that he wanted to help Valerie and performed CPR and cardiac massage on her, but all were unsuccessful. To avoid being charged with murder, he tried to hide the evidence of the crime. However, when the police asked why Valerie's body was found bound and gagged, Javier was unable to answer. When police later asked about Valerie's bank card, Javier stated that he had withdrawn another $4,350 from Valerie's account. During a search of Javier's home, Valerie's phone and laptop, which he had taken, were also found. Javier finally collapsed after a thorough examination of Valerie's body. There were signs of struggle and violence on her body. Under Valerie's fingernails, Javier's skin and blood were found. Javier's DNA was everywhere on the suitcase, in the car interior, on Valerie's belongings. Javier was immediately arrested and formally charged with the murder of Valerie Reyes. Under the pressure of irrefutable evidence, Javier da Silva finally fully admitted his guilt in court. On February 5, 2020, a hearing was held in the case of 24-year-old Valerie Reyes. Javier's lawyer tried to defend his actions, arguing that it was the result of a violent and jealous outburst, depression after the breakup with Valerie, and drug use. On September 3, 2021, the court affirmed that 28-year-old Javier da Silva was sentenced to 30 years in prison. This means that he will spend most of his life behind bars. The investigation also found that Javier had been living in the United States illegally. He arrived in the country on May 8, 2017, and his 90-day stay expired on August 5, 2017. Therefore, after serving his 30-year prison sentence, He will be immediately deported to his native Venezuela. Hello, crime enthusiasts, are you ready for another chilling investigation? The case of Christina and Thompson Harris. Christina and Thompson and Jason Thomas Harris, both 40, had been married for 11 years by 2014. They got married in 2003, after dating for about 5 years. In 2009, Christina and Jason welcomed their first child, which brought significant changes to their lives. Despite the daily challenges and responsibilities, they were happy to be parents. Christina took care of the house and the children, while Jason worked at a plastics factory. As the children grew up, Christina was able to contribute financially to the family by working. However, in May 2014, she had to take maternity leave because she was expecting their second child in a few weeks. On September 29, 2014, Jason chatted with Christina while at work. Christina was suffering from a cold. She had a bad cough and was not sleeping well, but she reassured her husband that she was fine. A few hours later, Jason called his wife at home but received no response, which worried him. Unable to reach Christina, Jason asked a neighbor to check on her. He explained that Christina was sick and not answering the phone. The neighbor knocked on the front door but got no answer, so she called Christina's name. Receiving no response, she decided to try the door, found it unlocked, and entered the house. When she entered the bedroom, she found Christina lying on the bed and could not wake her. The neighbor called 911 and ran out of the house to call another neighbor, a nurse. The nurse checked Christina's pulse and confirmed that she had died. Thus, on September 29, 2014, 4 months after the birth of her second child, Christina was found dead at home. When the police arrived, Jason Harris was present. He told the police and paramedics that his wife had been sick but was alive when he left for work that morning. 2 days later, the medical examiner ruled that Christina died from an overdose of a controlled substance, a finding that shocked her family and friends. Most people who knew Christina, a mother of 2, including a newborn, believed that she had never used drugs. Christina's mother, Kathy, told police that her daughter was fine when she saw her the day before she died. Police were therefore skeptical of Jason Harris's claim that his wife had a cold. According to Kathy, Christina said her marriage to Jason was complicated. Jason was unhappy with the marriage but did not want a divorce because of concerns about child support and custody. Neighbors who discovered Christina's body also provided additional information to the police. Jason reportedly told them that the night before Christina died, he had prepared cereal with milk for her, then Christina passed out and dropped the plate. Police realized that Christina's family and friends had a hard time accepting that she might be involved in drugs. Instead, police suspected that Jason Harris was involved in Christina's death. Christina's mother and sisters insisted that police test her breast milk. According to Kathy, the police ignored the request for 48 hours. However, thanks to the family's persistence, the police finally agreed to investigate. As a result, breast milk was used as evidence for the first time in Michigan history. As confirmed by Christina's family and friends, all drug tests at her workplace and at the hospital where she gave birth to her second child were negative. Her second child was only 4 months old when Christina died. Christina was breastfeeding, and Kathy confirmed that Christina was very careful about what she put into her body because she didn't want to affect her child. Christina often pumped breast milk while at work and stored it in the freezer. Some of the breast milk was left at Kathy's mother's house. They tested 3 bags of breast milk for possible drug residue. These bags were labeled with the date they were put in the freezer so Christina knew which bag to thaw first. Experts tested all the samples, including the ones frozen just before Christina died, and found no signs of drugs. This proves that Christina did not use the substance that killed her. Jason Harris's sister was the only one who suggested that Christina had used drugs, prompting investigators to focus more on Jason and treat Christina's death as a homicide. The investigation was slow, and it is unclear what would have happened if Christina's family had not been actively involved in the search for the truth. Kathy repeatedly reminded Davison police about her daughter's case in August 2016, nearly 2 years after Christina's death. Not seeing the enthusiasm and desire to solve her daughter's case in Davison, Kathy asked Davison police to turn the case over to the Michigan State Police, which had new investigators. From there, the story began to unravel. Police gathered a lot of information about Jason Harris, including how he acted before and after his wife's death. Jason had been having affairs with other women. Christina knew about this and confided in her family and co-workers that Jason had been texting other people while she was giving birth to their youngest child. Christina once told a co-worker that if she died, Jason would be the cause. When asked if she was serious, she said yes. Jason told his co-worker that he suspected the second child was not his biological child. He also complained that after the birth, Christina became depressed, often stayed in bed, and did not go to work. Jason often complained about Christina nagging him. A co-worker of Jason recalled that Jason may have told him that he wanted Christina dead. He described the relationship between Jason and Christina as toxic and recalled that they argued frequently. One of the most surprising and shocking things about this case is that Jason Harris did not hesitate to let everyone know that he wanted to get rid of his wife. He tried to do so, but unfortunately, no one paid attention to his words and actions before Christina died. Jason bought poison twice and mixed it into her drink. Both times, Christina felt that the taste was unusual and did not drink it. Jason then asked a co-worker to find him a poison that would not change the taste or smell of drinks or food. Jason said he wanted to knock Christina unconscious so she would not feel anything. When he shared with the co-worker that Christina would not drink water because it tasted strange, the co-worker refused to talk to him further. The co-worker testified that Jason had talked about wanting Christina to stop nagging and that the co-worker thought Jason was joking. Jason also told a co-worker that he had hired someone to kill Christina, but the person was arrested for another reason before the murder. Jason therefore offered the co-worker $10,000 from Christina's $100,000 life insurance policy to kill her. The co-worker refused the offer, thinking that Jason was just venting his anger by talking about his wife and making inappropriate jokes. According to the colleague, he recalled a conversation with Jason in which Jason said, "I'm bored with her. I'm going to dump her." The police then decided to question the neighbor who discovered Christina's body. The neighbor testified that she saw Christina's family truck in the driveway. But Christina did not come to the door. She entered the house and found Christina lying in bed, unresponsive. The neighbor asked Jason if she should try to wake her up. He replied that Christina must have fallen asleep and that he would come home. The neighbor went back inside and removed the covers around Christina because she felt cold and had foam coming from her mouth and nose. The neighbor called 911 and another neighbor who was a registered nurse. The neighbor, who was a registered nurse, testified that Christina was cold, stiff, had no pulse, and had white foam coming from her mouth. She did not attempt to resuscitate Christina because she believed she was already dead. Jason told the police that he asked a neighbor to check on Christina and that he had to rush home because Christina was unresponsive. However, witnesses said Jason did not appear anxious or in a hurry. What raised suspicions about Jason was that morning, he called Christina's supervisor at work. He told her that Christina had died the night before and that he wanted to inquire about the $100,000 death benefit from Christina's life insurance policy through work. Additionally, one of the women Jason had an intimate relationship with told investigators that Jason had contacted her on the day of Christina's death and said that his wife had died from an overdose of a controlled substance. This suggests that he knew what caused Christina's death even before the medical examiner's report. That evening, the neighbor he had asked to check on Christina saw him in his driveway. She said that Jason told her that Christina was not the angel her parents thought she was and that their child would soon learn all the good and bad things about Christina. He said that Christina dropped her bowl of cereal, and he told her to go to bed. Jason also told a neighbor that his wife tossed and turned during the night and that he heard her coughing before he left for work. Jason wondered if that was her last breath. Jason told a police officer that Christina was coughing a lot when he left the house. He also told the police that Christina fell asleep eating cereal the night before she died. Finally, Jason told Christina's mother, Kathy, that before she died, Christina complained that her water tasted like chemicals. One of the main motives in this case is believed to be insurance money. Within a week of Christina's death, Jason and his mother went to Christina's workplace to inquire about the life insurance money. Additionally, Jason received a $20,000 death benefit from a life insurance policy issued by his company shortly after Christina's death. One of Jason's lovers moved in with Jason and his children. Christina's mother believed that Jason's lover moved in with him after Christina's funeral. However, Jason's neighbor testified that the lover had even moved into Jason's home before Christina's funeral. The neighbor added that Jason's adult children from a previous marriage moved into the home within days of Christina's death. Police also discovered that Jason Harris purchased a plane ticket to Rhode Island 9 days after Christina's death to visit a woman with whom he had exchanged more than 5,800 text messages. County Medical Examiner Dr. Brian Hunter submitted post-mortem blood and urine samples for laboratory testing. Dr. Hunter determined that the test results were consistent with Christina being poisoned by a lethal substance. Initially, Dr. Hunter determined that her death was an accident. Because there were no injection marks on Christina's body and investigators did not find any powder residue or rolling papers next to the bed where Christina died. In 2016, the Michigan State Police took over the investigation into Christina's death. In 2019, after Christina's family disputed Christina's cause of death, Dr. Hunter later changed Christina's death certificate from an accident to a homicide. Police charged Jason with first-degree murder, solicitation of murder, and delivery of a controlled substance resulting in death. He was denied bail. Jason's attorney, Nicholas Robinson, said his client pleaded not guilty to the charges and wanted to fight them. When he was arrested, Jason had lost his job after testing positive for drugs. Kathy's efforts to ensure that law enforcement would punish the person responsible for her daughter's death were not overlooked. Gena's County Prosecutor David Layton said that a few years ago, he began receiving Facebook messages and emails from a Davidson woman who claimed her daughter had died and that her death was not an accident. "It can't be happening," the woman told the prosecutor. She was certain that someone had caused her daughter's death. Kathy's passionate pleas caught David Layton's attention, prompting authorities to re-examine the death of her daughter, Christina. "I will never forget what she wrote in an email, Prosecutor, you are my last hope. This is our last chance to get justice for my daughter. Please help me," David Layton said. "At that moment and as I spoke to her this morning, I was absolutely convinced that her daughter's death was not an accident. It was the result of foul play. It was Kathy's relentless efforts to seek justice for her daughter's death that led to this situation. And those efforts paid off." The trial began in 2020. The prosecution alleged that Jason put a controlled substance in his wife's cereal bowl to kill her. He then went to work as usual, waited a few hours, and asked a neighbor to check on Christina. According to the prosecution, Jason wanted someone else to discover his wife's body in order to reduce suspicion against him. The direct evidence against Jason was overwhelming. Jason had a motive for killing Christina. He was having an affair with another woman, suspected she was cheating on him, believed the second child was not his, and was tired of her nagging. Jason did not want a divorce because he did not want to pay child support or lose custody of her. Before her death, Jason told a coworker that he wanted Christina dead. On the morning of her death, Jason called her company to inquire about a $100,000 life insurance policy, and in that call, he said Christina had died the night before. The jury heard clear evidence that Jason not only wanted Christina dead, but that he had tried to hire someone to kill her. He planned to do this and knew where to buy illegal drugs. In fact, he had purchased them on multiple occasions to give to Christina. At trial, multiple witnesses testified that Christina did not use drugs recreationally. Christina was very careful about what she consumed because she was breastfeeding. Furthermore, tests showed that her frozen breast milk contained no harmful substances. To support the theory that Jason had poisoned Christina's food, the prosecution presented toxicology reports. For example, Dr. Judge argued that Christina's death could have been caused by ingestion of some kind of poison. The prosecution ruled out injection because no traces of injection or needles were found at the scene. Dr. Judge also testified that inhalation was unlikely because no rolled-up dollar bills or snorting paper were found at the scene. The court gave Jason Harris a chance to speak, but he did not apologize or show remorse. Instead, he insisted that he was innocent. The judge said, "The jury did not believe your lies," ultimately exposing him as a selfish and deceitful murderer. On November 17, 2021, the jury found Jason Harris, 47, guilty on all charges. 3 weeks later, the court sentenced him to life in prison without parole. He has appealed the verdict, however. After the trial, prosecutor David Layton expressed his condolences to Christina's family and friends, emphasizing that this was a tragic case. Layton went on to say, "While this case has many unique and media-driven details, the most important thing is the family's loss. I hope this verdict helps them find comfort in knowing that justice has been served." Jason requested a new trial on the grounds that his defense attorney did not do a good job. He introduced evidence in the form of his attorney's testimony, showing that his defense attorney failed to seek an independent expert opinion on the prosecution's evidence and failed to consult with an independent toxicologist. Jason's defense attorney explained this decision as part of a trial strategy because he had thoroughly questioned Dr. Hunter and was able to show the jury that Dr. Hunter had changed his opinion about the cause of death based on information from a related civil lawsuit. In February 2024, the Michigan Court of Appeals upheld Jason Harris's conviction. He remains in prison for life without the possibility of parole. Hello again, true crime fans. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of Tara Lynn Grant. Tara Lynn Grant was born on June 22, 1972 in Michigan. She grew up on a farm with her parents and older sister. During her childhood, Tara enjoyed doing outdoor activities such as horseback riding and helping her family take care of farm animals. She was also very active in school sports, cheerleading, playing basketball and playing music in the school band. After completing high school, Tara decided to attend the University of Michigan. It was here that she met her boyfriend Steven and married him after graduating. Tara, after graduating, got a good job at a large international company. Meanwhile, Steven had been involved in politics as an assistant to a state senator. However, when the senator retired, Steven lost his job. Therefore, he decided to work at his father's small tool shop. After 4 years of marriage, Tara and Steven had a daughter, followed by a son a few years later. When their second child was born, they bought a new home in Monmouth County, Michigan, just outside of Detroit. Tara was successful in her career, but due to the nature of her work, she often traveled to different states and countries, leaving her with only weekends to spend with her family. As a result, Steven had to take on most of the responsibility for the children. His father's store job and the children's care were difficult for him. so they decided to hire a full-time nanny to help ease the burden. After a short time, they found the right person. They hired a young German woman who quickly bonded with their children and took on most of the childcare. Because of her work, Tara only came home on weekends, which led to more frequent arguments between them. Tara expected that after her next promotion, she would be able to adjust her schedule to spend more time at home with her family, but when she was promoted, she traveled for work almost every day. This continued until February 14, 2007, when something unexpected happened. On Valentine's Day, Stephen reported to the police that Tara had been out of contact for 5 days. This was unusual because Tara was in constant contact with her family, especially when children were involved. Stephen recounted the incident as follows. On the evening of February 9th, Tara returned home from a business trip and said she had to leave earlier than expected, staying home for only 1 day. This led to an argument, and Tara began packing her things. As she left the house, she told the driver of a dark-colored car, "I'll be waiting down the street." From then on, Tara was out of contact and did not return any calls. The police wondered why Stephen waited 5 days to report the incident. Stephen explained that he was not worried at first because he thought Tara had just left for work early as planned and had not contacted her because they had just had an argument. However, he became concerned when Tara did not contact her family for an extended period of time. Normally, when she was on a business trip, she would call her 2 young children, but this time she did not contact them. Furthermore, Tara's boss called Stephen on Monday to say that she had not shown up for a meeting. This made him even more worried, and he was sure that Tara was missing. Stephen called Tara's parents and told them about her lack of contact with home. However, the parents thought that Tara just needed time off after an argument with Stephen. Previously, Tara had told her parents that her relationship with Stephen was having difficulties due to work, and they argued frequently. Therefore, her relatives thought that Tara just wanted to temporarily leave and would return home when she had stabilized. As time passed and Tara still did not appear, and she did not answer any calls, Stephen began to worry about her safety. He decided to contact the police for help. During the interrogation, the police noticed some suspicious scratches on Stephen. They asked if the scratches were related to the argument with Tara. But Stephen denied it. He explained that he often got injured while working at his father's store. After the interview, the police said they needed to search Stephen's home, and he agreed. When they arrived, the police discovered that all of Tara's belongings were missing from the home, including her papers and wallet, along with her suitcase. Stephen also gave them access to Tara's personal computer. The police checked it and found that there had been no bank transactions in the days after she disappeared. The police were surprised because Tara would have needed to pay for expenses if she had gone somewhere, such as buying a plane ticket or booking a hotel room. During the search of the home, the police found no signs of Tara's whereabouts after she disappeared. There was no evidence or clues. Therefore, the police decided to focus on determining what she had been doing and where she had been on February 9th. The area they live in is considered one of the safest in the country, and the local police department has little experience investigating similar disappearances. The police ask Stephen to take a lie detector test, but he refuses. Stephen insists that he would never harm his wife and becomes very emotional. The police then leave his home and consider their next steps. However, the next morning, Stephen contacts the police again and says he is willing to cooperate. However, a short time later, Stephen's lawyer contacts the police and says he has advised his agent not to cooperate with the police. Other than following the usual practice in such cases, they are unable to find any other leads. During the investigation, Tara's family, friends, and colleagues said they had not heard from her since February 9th and did not know where she might be. Additionally, her bank account had not recorded any significant transactions, although she needed to make some basic purchases. Police began to question Stephen and discovered that his driver's license had been revoked. However, Stephen continued to drive despite the ban. Police used this to arrest Stephen for driving without a license. After his arrest, Stephen claimed that the police were considering him a prime suspect in his wife's disappearance and refused to answer any questions. With the assistance of his lawyer, Stephen was released on bail and returned home. Police continued to investigate and requested Tara's cell phone records to gather more evidence. On the day Tara went missing, she made one last call. It was from the airport, in which she told Stephen that she would be home soon. Stephen then called her repeatedly, but all the calls went to voicemail. The police listened to these recordings and found that Stephen asked Tara to answer or call back. He claimed that Tara did not care about the children and asked her to come home for the children. However, Tara's cell phone was turned off and was last connected to a cell tower near her home on the evening of her disappearance. It is worth noting that the police did not find any incoming calls to Tara at that time, although Stephen said that someone had called her before she left the house and said that the person would be waiting for her on the street. Stephen was really worried about his wife and at the same time angry at Tara's actions of abandoning their children. Although the police were investigating him, they could not find any new traces. Stephen still refused to cooperate with the police, accusing them of wasting time suspecting him instead of looking for Tara. During this time, Stephen actively appeared in the media. Tara's mysterious disappearance attracted a lot of attention from many people, and in front of the camera, Stephen begged her to return home safely. When the company that Stephen and Tara hired the nanny learned about the case, they decided to send the nanny back to Germany. Before leaving, the nanny reported to the police about her working hours at their house. The nanny said that on the evening Tara came home, she went to a bar with her friends. When the nanny returned home, she met Stephen, who seemed sad and said that Tara had just left home. Although Stephen refused to cooperate with the police, he hired a private investigator, a former FBI agent, to investigate the case. However, this investigator also failed to find Tara. The police decided to change their approach and contacted the nanny agency that employed Tara and Stephen. They discovered an important piece of information. Before hiring the German nanny, they had a total of 6 other nannies, but none of them had worked there long term. Police interviewed the nannies, most of whom said Stephen behaved strangely and unnervingly. They said he would rummage through their belongings, ask personal questions, and verbally abuse them. The police began investigating why the last nanny from Germany had a completely different description of her time with the family. They had only heard good things about Stephen. To clarify the matter, the police monitored the nanny's emails and phone calls. This led to an unexpected piece of information. The police discovered text messages between her and Stephen, which showed that they had been in a relationship. It was learned that the 19-year-old had been having an affair with him during Tara's business trips and that the relationship continued until she quit her job and had to leave the country. Although this was an important clue, the police could not yet conclude that Stephen was involved in Tara's disappearance. Therefore, they continued to look for other evidence. During the investigation, the police talked to Tara's relatives and friends and found that most of them did not like Stephen because of his strange behavior. They believed that Stephen wanted to control Tara's every move and often caused conflicts with her family. The police also found another important piece of information. Stephen's ex-girlfriend, whom he had dated before meeting Tara, contacted the police and revealed something surprising. According to her, Stephen contacted her again a few months ago, and their conversations gradually became intimate. Eventually, Stephen expressed his desire to start a romantic relationship with her, even though they were both married to other people. Stephen also complained about Tara and her frequent absences. He suspected that she was cheating on him with her boss. To verify this, he installed tracking software on her computer, allowing him to read her messages, but he found no evidence of Tara's infidelity. This information made the police even more suspicious of her husband's involvement in Tara's disappearance. However, the police still needed more evidence. Since it had been several weeks since Tara went missing, they began to consider the possibility that she was no longer alive and began an extensive search for her body. Police, along with volunteers, began searching the area around Tara's house and a large park nearby for several miles. However, the search lasted for several days and still yielded no results. But everything changed on February 28th. A woman walking in the park discovered something strange under a tree along the path. A plastic bag was covered with branches and snow, but it was clear that there was still something inside. Therefore, she decided to examine the bag closely. When she looked into the bag, she discovered rubber gloves and metal fragments along with a dark red substance at the bottom of the bag. She called the police to report the incident, and she decided to keep the bag and turn it in to the police. Police suspected the dark red substance could be blood, so they sent the bag to a lab for testing. However, due to the large workload, experts said the DNA analysis could take up to 2 months. In the meantime, experts have tested the bag and confirmed that the dark red substance is indeed human blood. The police focused all their efforts on the area where the bag was found, mobilizing all resources to investigate. Meanwhile, Stephen did not participate in the search. Instead, Stephen spent his time giving an interview to a news channel, giving many suspicious answers. Stephen repeatedly criticized Tara for being away from home so often. He called her a bad mother and claimed that he shouldered most of the responsibility for taking care of the children. When the reporter asked about their financial situation and whether he was living off Tara's money, Stephen became angry. He insisted that he did not need a single penny from Tara. During the interview, Stephen accused Tara of having an affair but did not provide any evidence. He repeatedly criticized Tara. The police obtained a search warrant for Tara and Stephen's home. The police arrived at Stephen's home. At the same time, Stephen returned from an interview with a reporter. The police informed him of the search warrant for his home. Stephen opened the door for them and then called his lawyer. The lawyer asked the police if Stephen was under arrest. The police replied that he was not. Stephen then said that he was going to walk his dog and left. During that time, the police searched each room in the house. They eventually arrived at the garage and found a large green bin containing several plastic bags. When they opened one of the plastic bags, they found an unknown substance and women's clothing. When the police opened the other bag, they discovered that it contained human remains. After examining a total of 5 bags in the bin, the police quickly confirmed that they contained the remains of a woman. Police believed they had found Tara's body and suspected Stephen of being her killer. However, Stephen did not appear, so the police immediately launched a search for him to prevent him from fleeing or causing harm to others. Meanwhile, the police requested reinforcements to search the park for Tara's remains as more remains were still missing from the garage. Over 100 police officers from neighboring counties were called in to assist in the search, and their efforts soon paid off. A few hundred meters from where the bag was found, the police found another body part. Then they found the head. Due to the cold weather, the rest of the body was quite well preserved, helping the police confirm that it was Tara. The police continued to search and found some more body parts. However, in the evening, the search had to be stopped until the next morning. During this time, the police also tried to locate Stephen but were unsuccessful. They contacted his friends, and one of them revealed that Stephen had called him, informing him that the police were searching at Stephen's house and asking to pick him up on the way. Stephen's friend came to pick him up and took him home. On the way, he noticed that Stephen's behavior was very strange. He seemed scared, his hands were shaking, and he seemed very depressed. When Stephen arrived at his friend's house, Stephen said he wanted to see his children and borrowed a car from his friend. However, Stephen's children were at his sister's house in another state at the time. The friend agreed to lend him the pickup truck, and Stephen left. In order to track Stephen, the police requested his phone and credit card information. This helped them quickly determine Stephen's travel route. By monitoring his withdrawals and calls to his sister, the police realized that Stephen was on his way to see his children. Realizing this, the police immediately set out to track him. An unexpected event occurred. The police received a call from a German woman with whom Stephen had a relationship. The woman said that Stephen had just contacted her and confessed to killing his wife, Tara. According to him, they had argued that night and he became violent after Tara slapped him. In a fit of rage, Stephen pushed Tara and she fell to the floor, resulting in her death from head injuries. After this confession, the police no longer had any doubts about Stephen's guilt. However, they still needed to catch him. For hours, they searched the area along the highway leading to the neighboring state. They eventually found Stephen's car near the entrance to the national park, but he himself was nowhere to be found. The police searched the area and after several hours of searching, they found Stephen using a thermal imaging camera. He was lying under a tree, wearing light clothing and in a dangerous state of hypothermia. The officers noticed that he was suffering from an unusual condition, often talking to trees and mumbling incomprehensible sentences. Fearing that he was in danger, the officers quickly airlifted him to the hospital. At that time, his body temperature was only 88 degrees Fahrenheit, but doctors were able to save him. However, he needed time to fully recover. While Stephen was in the hospital, he was charged with murder and the case was transferred to court. Interestingly, on the same day, Stephen's attorney refused to defend him. When asked why, Stephen's attorney gave a vague answer. A new attorney was then appointed for Stephen. Meanwhile, forensic pathologists began investigating Tara's remains. One of the most experienced pathologists in the country, who had worked on such high-profile cases as the JFK case and the JonBenet Ramsey case, was appointed as the chief medical examiner. After examining Tara's remains, the chief medical examiner concluded that Stephen's story did not match the facts. According to Stephen, Tara died of head trauma, but the investigation actually showed that Tara's cause of death was strangulation. When Stephen recovered, the police came to the hospital to see him and he told them what happened that night. The incident started when Tara returned and said she had to leave a day early. This led to a heated argument between the two. In a fit of rage, Stephen attacked Tara. She tried to leave, but he held her back. Tara defended herself by punching Stephen in the face, which angered him and he attacked her. The incident escalated when Stephen yelled at and strangled Tara. He then dragged her body down the second floor to the garage and put her in the trunk of his car. Meanwhile, the nanny returned home. To cover up his crime, Stephen told her that Tara had left him. The next day, he took the body to his father's workshop while making sure no one else was there. To cover his tracks, Stephen destroyed all of Tara's documents and personal belongings, then used a saw to cut her body into pieces. A few hours later, he packed the remains into plastic bags, placed them in a container, and returned home, leaving the body in his car for several days. He pondered how to dispose of the remains while creating an alibi for himself. He repeatedly called Tara and left messages on her voicemail, begging her to come home. Stephen took his son's sled and went to the park. There, he placed the container containing Tara's remains on the sled and began pulling it up a hill to avoid the crowded area. However, the rope he was pulling the sled with was not secure, and it slipped out of his hands. The sled began to roll down, the container tipped over, and the bags containing the remains spilled out. After picking up the bags, Stephen put the container back on the sled, and after a while, he found a remote place to bury the bags under the snow. He then left the park. A few days after he left, the police began looking for Tara, and the detectives announced that they would begin a search in the area of the park where Stephen had buried the bags. Stephen became panicked, remembering that the largest bag had been poorly hidden and could soon be discovered. To avoid this, he decided to move the bags to a safer place. Stephen went to the park, picked up a few bags, shouldered them, and carried them to his father's workshop, placing them on the roof. The next day, before going to the interview, he took the box from home, went to the workshop to carry the bags back to his garage. However, the next day, the police obtained a search warrant for the house. There, they found the bags in the box. When the situation became clear, Stephen confessed that he had not originally planned to surrender. During his conversation with the police, Stephen showed no remorse for his crimes. Instead, he often smiled and joked even as he described the process of hiding and disposing of the body. While Stephen awaited trial in prison, his children continued to live with his sister. This did not please Tara's family. Despite this, Stephen's sister continued to keep in touch with him, even feeling sorry for him and responding to jokes about Tara's murder. Tara's family eventually won custody of the children, but Stephen's family was still allowed to see them. In November 2007, Stephen's trial began. However, he did not deny his guilt. His new attorney then tried to get Stephen to get a reduced sentence. The attorney explained that Stephen and Tara's troubled marriage and Tara's frequent absences were the main reasons for Stephen's crime. During the trial, Stephen had lied about Tara's plans to come home a day earlier. Tara's sister, who had spoken to her before the murder, also confirmed this information. During that conversation, Tara told her sister that she would be home soon after that, as she did every week. There was no evidence that Tara had lied to her husband. Tara's boss said that Tara's relationship with the man was purely business, which was confirmed by their emails and text messages. The prosecution failed to prove that Stephen had planned the murder in advance. He had clearly committed the crime in a fit of rage, which could have resulted in a second-degree murder charge instead of a first-degree one. On December 21, 2007, the jury unanimously found Stephen guilty and he was sentenced to a minimum of 50 years in prison. Stephen's attorney attempted to appeal the verdict, but to no avail. He has since served time behind bars. But his story didn't end there. Tara's murder captured the attention of millions across the country, and Stephen clearly enjoyed it. While in prison, he began writing a book and begged to have it published with the help of his sister. They even discussed the possibility of turning it into a movie, and Stephen considered which famous actor could play him. In 2008, something else came to light. Stephen's children told their aunt that they had actually seen their father kill their mother that evening. They came out of the room after hearing screams and witnessed the whole thing. When this information appeared in the media, Stephen's relatives accused the children of lying and continued to protect him. That same year, it was revealed that Stephen's father, unlike other relatives, did not support him, could not live with what his son had done, and Stephen's father's body was found in his home. To this day, Stephen remains behind bars and will only be eligible for parole in 2058. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Ryan Widmer. Sarah and Ryan Widmer met at a favorite coffee shop. Ryan ordered a cup of coffee while Sarah was waiting in line, and happened to see a book on his table that she had just finished reading. Their shared interest in literature opened up their first conversation. Gradually, they spent many hours discussing common topics such as books, movies, music, and daily routines. Through the conversation, they discovered that they both loved nature, travel, and animals. After each meeting, their relationship became closer and more trusting of each other. Their understanding and trust grew more and more. Finally, their relationship developed into love. After a few months of dating, Ryan proposed to Sarah at a romantic sunset at the same coffee shop where they met. Sarah felt very happy and agreed to the proposal. The young couple planned their wedding and found a two-story house in Hamilton. Finally, on April 10, 2008, their wedding took place. They chose a small church to hold the wedding ceremony, with the participation of close friends and beloved family. Everything, even the smallest details, was planned by Sarah in a special way. On the important day, Sarah looked gorgeous and beautiful, and Ryan couldn't take his eyes off her. After the wedding and the party, the couple decided to go on a honeymoon to the Hawaiian Islands, where they spent 2 weeks exploring the beautiful paradise and enjoying time together. At this time, they were deeply in love and had already planned for the future, dreaming of having children. On the evening of Monday, August 11, 2008, after finishing work at the dental clinic, Sarah met Ryan at a cafe. They had dinner and talked happily. After that, they walked home. Sarah packed her groceries and sat down on the couch. Ryan brought her a glass of water and a headache pill. He gave her a bath, and they finished watching their favorite TV show together. Sarah went upstairs to the bedroom. She undressed, folded her clothes neatly, prepared a towel, lit a scented candle, and turned on her favorite music. Ryan pressed the button on the TV remote, pausing a few times on the football game. He lay on the couch for no more than 10 minutes. He called his wife, but Sarah didn't hear him, so he slowly went upstairs. In the bedroom, Ryan turned on the TV and called Sarah again. There was silence. In a panic, he went into the bathroom, where he found Sarah lying face down in the bathtub. Ryan unplugged the bathtub and took out his phone to call 911. At 10:49 p.m., under the direction of the police, Ryan finally got Sarah out of the bathtub and performed CPR on her. Within 6 minutes, an ambulance and police were at Ryan's home. An initial inspection of the scene caught the attention of the police. The bathroom was dry and clean, with no signs of water or scattered objects. Sarah was lying on the bedroom floor, naked, her skin dry. Only her wet hair suggested she had drowned. A paramedic performed CPR when there was no pulse. A pinkish-white fluid flowed from Sarah's nose and mouth. 2 attempts to intubate Sarah while she was lying on the bedroom floor were unsuccessful. Sarah was then rushed to the emergency room and 2 more attempts were made to bring her heart rate back to normal with a defibrillator, both unsuccessful. During this time, Ryan remained by his wife's side. Within 20 minutes of arriving at the hospital, they attempted to revive Sarah, but at 11:41 p.m., an emergency room doctor pronounced her dead. Ryan knelt in the hospital hallway and cried. Relatives and friends of the couple could not have imagined that just 4 months after their wedding, a tragedy would strike that would shock the entire city and make Ryan the prime suspect in Sarah's death. When the police questioned him at the hospital, Ryan's initial statements raised suspicions. Ryan claimed that he and his wife had been home that night. They had dined out, returned home, and watched TV. Then, because his wife had a headache, Ryan gave her painkillers and led her to the bathroom. Some details in Ryan's statement did not match the emergency call records. The victim had collapsed face down, while Ryan said his wife was lying face up. This discrepancy made the police question Ryan's statement. Ryan was deeply shocked by what had happened. He kept calling Sarah's name. Under pressure from the police, Ryan was forced to participate in the investigation to find out information about Sarah's death. He agreed to allow his house to be searched. Analysis of the medication Sarah had taken showed that it was a common painkiller commonly used to treat headaches and migraines. However, she had been taking a course of medication that altered her hormones and caused her to fall into an uncontrollable sleep. After searching the house, traces of blood were found on the carpet. During the investigation, the police discovered several signs that made them suspicious of Ryan's story. When they arrived at the scene, The bathtub and tiles were dry with no signs of water. No wet items, clothing, or other items were found in the house that could have soaked up the water. The autopsy revealed that Sarah had several injuries to her body, including bruises to her head, neck, armpits, and lips. However, there were no signs of a struggle or resistance. Sarah's fingernails were intact, not broken or chipped. This does not fit the theory that Sarah was murdered after a struggle. Sarah's autopsy, conducted by Dr. Russell Appointment Grove, showed that she died of drowning. During the autopsy, experts also discovered multiple muscle hemorrhages in the front of her neck and bruises on her head. These injuries were determined to have occurred before her death. However, the cause of these injuries is still unknown. Toxicology tests ruled out the presence of illegal substances or alcohol in Sarah's blood. This makes the question of what caused her death even more difficult to answer. On August 13, 2008, Ryan was arrested on suspicion of murdering his wife. The charge was based on the emergency call, a scene that did not match the reality, and the injuries on Sarah's body. This was enough to charge him with murdering his wife. Ryan and Sarah were very much in love, as friends and neighbors confirmed. They never argued or fought in public and always planned their lives. What caused Sarah's death? In March 2009, the first trial began with emergency line officer Ron Cronenberger taking the stand. He described the phone conversation with Ryan as calm and relaxed. However, Ron Cronenberger also said that Ryan appeared to be just blowing into the tube, pretending to perform CPR. The prosecution argued that the information from the 911 call, the scene, and Sarah's injuries were enough to prove that Ryan killed her by forcing her underwater and drowning her in the bathtub. The main piece of evidence in the case was the bathtub. Police examined the bathtub for fingerprints and found what they believed to be human handprints. These were located closer to the middle of the bathtub. Using a reflective ultraviolet photographic process, fingerprints and stains were found on the bathtub. A fingerprint was found on the forearm, and hair follicle testing determined that it was left by an adult male, but the age of the fingerprint could not be determined. The police called in a medical expert, who testified that falling asleep and dying in a bathtub was unlikely unless illegal drugs or alcohol were involved. According to the expert, the sensation of water on the face could have awakened the person or triggered a reflex response to the airway. Otherwise, the reduction in oxygen in the muscles would have likely awakened the victim. In addition, the pathologist who performed the autopsy was called to testify. He stated that if Sarah had a dry body and wet hair, a likely explanation would be that her head had been pushed off the edge of the bathtub, toilet, or sink. She could have been pushed forward or backward, in running water or in a full bathtub. According to the prosecution's case, Ryan held Sarah's head underwater until she drowned, and on that basis, he should be convicted. Ryan's defense attorney argued that he was innocent, and that he had no motive to kill Sarah. The attorney said that if there had been a violent struggle, as the prosecution argued, there would have been evidence of that. However, there were no injuries on Ryan, and Sarah's fingernails were not broken or chipped. The attorney said that the injuries found on Sarah were the result of prolonged CPR, direct cardiac massage, and multiple attempts at intubation that night in the house, in the ambulance on the way to the hospital, and at the hospital itself. At the defense's request, a second autopsy was performed. Dr. Werner Spitz performed a second autopsy and again confirmed that the cause of death was drowning. He observed injuries to her neck, arms, upper lip, skull, a lacerated liver, and bleeding from her neck, but could not determine whether these injuries were due to CPR. Those present argued that the paramedics had been trying to resuscitate Sarah for about 45 minutes and that the deep bleeding inside Sarah's neck could have been caused by N4 being inserted into the area because paramedics could not reach the veins in her arms. Instead of ruling it a homicide, Dr. Werner Spitz ruled Sarah's death undetermined. The defense said her skin was dry because it dries faster than her hair. They also said that when Ryan found his wife unconscious, he pushed the drain in the bathtub, tried to help her, and called emergency services. This chain of events explains why her body was drier than expected. The water had drained out of the bathtub even before Ryan called 911. However, it is not yet known whether the jury's verdict would have changed if they had received credible evidence that Sarah's medical condition could have caused the drowning. The official reason for denying a new trial was that the jury had made errors in its investigation. Ryan was surprised when Jennifer Cruz came to the prosecutor's office to testify about Ryan's guilt. She said she was friends with Ryan and that he had been in regular contact with her by phone or email. According to Jennifer's testimony, he called on October 26, 2009, at 11:09 p.m. In a very upset voice, he told her that he had beaten Sarah in the living room on the day of her death. Sarah had discovered his infidelity and had seen inappropriate photos. They had argued for a long time, first downstairs and then in the bedroom. Ryan pushed her into the bathroom and left his wife there without checking to see what had happened to her. He was angry, and after calming down, he found Sarah floating in a bathtub full of water. To cover his tracks, he wiped up the water on the bathroom floor with a towel and came up with a plan for the accident. Ryan's attorneys worked hard to prove his innocence. They tried to throw out Jennifer's testimony because they thought it was unreasonable. One obvious example was that no towels were found in the house, including the dryer. And there was no evidence of infidelity in their marriage. The family had no financial problems and never argued. Ryan was described by friends as a kind and helpful person who never showed anger. Ryan would not benefit from his wife's death because he did not have a life insurance policy. Before the third trial began, Jennifer was discredited and barred from testifying. The call that Ryan allegedly confessed to her was not authenticated. In January 2011, a trial was held based on new evidence. The defense argued that Sarah had underlying medical conditions that could have caused her to suddenly lose consciousness and drown. Several medical experts testified in support of the defense, stating that some heart or neurological defect could have led to the loss of consciousness. However, the state's medical experts disagreed with this assessment. The trial also revealed additional details about Sarah's health and daily routine. Her co-workers testified that she often slept in her car before going to work at the dental office due to severe allergies and stomach aches. On the day of her death, Sarah had complained of headaches and stomach aches to her dentist boss. That evening, Sarah talked to a friend and mentioned her headaches and neck pain, and her friend said she looked extremely tired. Her ability to fall asleep quickly led her friends to think she might have narcolepsy. Narcolepsy is a sleep disorder characterized by excessive daytime sleepiness. People with narcolepsy often have difficulty staying awake and need to take frequent naps to cope. However, Sarah's mother, Ruth Ann Stewart, disputed this idea when she testified as a prosecution witness at trial. She claimed that she had never seen her daughter have sleep problems and described Sarah as a healthy and active child with a regular daily routine. Sarah's medical records also supported this claim. As a dental hygienist, Sarah had undergone regular checkups and her last checkup showed no signs of health problems. In addition, other witnesses who claimed Sarah was excessively sleepy gave unconvincing testimony. In cases where a person tries to strangle another from behind, the victim often suffers defensive injuries to the arms and legs, as well as injuries to the small bones in the neck. However, Sarah's autopsy did not show any such injuries. The defense urged the jury to consider all the facts surrounding the case, that Ryan had no reason to harm Sarah. Once again, the defense was defeated. After about 12 hours of deliberations, Ryan was convicted of murder and sentenced to 15 years in prison. The jury based their decision on the lack of water on Sarah's body and around the bathtub, and that Ryan's call to 911 was staged. One juror felt that Ryan's demeanor in court was one of the main reasons he believed Ryan was guilty. When the autopsy photos were shown, they felt that Ryan was completely unresponsive. Ryan did not take a stand, although he told the court after the verdict was announced, he loved his wife. He did not hurt her. Ryan remains in custody, awaiting a federal court ruling that could determine his parole status. After 14 years in prison, his first chance for parole will be in July 2025. With each passing year, Ryan holds out hope that the next year will bring him freedom. He continues to maintain his innocence and profess his love for Sarah, insisting that he did not harm her. Ryan's chances of parole in 2025 appear slim, as the parole board tends to favor inmates who show remorse. Since Ryan has always maintained his innocence, he could face an uphill battle for parole. Welcome back, detectives. Let's dive into another horrible case. The case of Eva Blanco. Eva Blanco was born on February 17, 1981, in Spain. Her father is Manuel Blanco, and her mother is Olga Puig. In 1997, the Eva family moved to Algete, a small city near Madrid. They chose this place to enjoy a peaceful life, away from the hustle and bustle of the capital. Of the three sisters Eva, Rebecca, and Maria, Eva is known as the quietest girl when she is with her close friends and relatives. However, Eva always radiates as a cheerful, trustworthy, and wonderful companion. She is also very active in sports activities, and this passion brings Eva endless joy and happiness. At school, she is admired by many people for her charm and warm, friendly personality. Eva is a good example for her younger sisters and is a responsible girl. She always followed all the rules set by her parents, including the curfew, so that they did not have to worry or be upset. However, on fateful day, things did not go as planned. On the afternoon of April 19th, Eva and her friends were playing tennis, enjoying the carefree moments of youth. They had no idea that this seemingly normal afternoon would soon turn dark and sad. On Saturday evening, as the sun set, they decided to go to a local disco to enjoy their strong friendship and spend time together until late at night. Eva asked her mother for permission to come home later than usual. Olga, seeing that her daughter was always responsible, agreed to let Eva stay until midnight before going home. It was late at night, and the clock struck 11:30. One by one, the group said goodbye to each other and returned home, including Eva. Little did she know that her journey home would lead to dangerous mysteries. Eva and her friend decided to take a shortcut through a vacant lot to get home faster. It was a route she had taken many times before, but fate had other plans for her. At 11:45 p.m., they parted ways, and Eva began walking through the familiar dark vacant lot. As midnight approached, Eva's mother became worried that her daughter had not returned home. She contacted Eva's friends for information, but they said they had broken up and that Eva was supposed to be home by then. This made her even more worried. She decided to alert her husband, a tow truck driver, who soon began searching for Eva in town. They were joined in the search by their nephew, a local police officer, and the father of one of Eva's friends. At 1 a.m., Eva's parents reported their daughter missing to the local civil police station. However, they were disappointed by the lack of interest shown by the police, who took just over an hour to file a missing persons report. The police downplayed the seriousness of the situation, suggesting that children Eva's age were often on drugs and that she might be lying in a doorway or on the sidewalk. This clearly implied that they were not taking the search for her seriously. During the night, Eva's father visited the local civil police station 15 times. He was extremely frustrated and criticized the agency for not quickly organizing a search for Eva. He accused the civil police of neglecting their duties. However, the police denied this and explained that according to normal procedure, they would wait several hours before starting a search for a missing person. Meanwhile, Eva's father was still worried and hoping that his daughter would return safely. However, the real reason behind this delay remains unclear, adding to the uncertainty and despair. The search for Eva began at 2:30 a.m. Family, friends, and authorities searched the town and surrounding area. However, the police did not file a missing persons report until 8 a.m. By noon, Eva's family had contacted local television station Telemadrid, asking them to report on the incident. At 9 a.m., Eva's body was discovered by two elderly people, 6 kilometers from the town of Algete, near a road construction site connecting Cobina and Belvis de Jarama. This area is often chosen by young couples for private rendezvous in their cars. Initially, the discoverers suspected a serious traffic accident, thinking that she had been run over. However, when the police arrived, they discovered a much more horrifying truth. Eva had been brutally murdered, lying face down on the ground with multiple stab wounds. She was wearing jeans, a dark sweater and hiking boots, the same clothes she had worn on the day of her disappearance. A sleeve of her jacket was missing, indicating a violent struggle. Investigators believe both Eva and her killer arrived at the scene by car. However, heavy rain overnight washed away tire tracks and other vital forensic evidence. Despite the difficulties, investigators discovered Eva's faint footprints and a crucial clue, the footprints of a man wearing size 42 moccasins. The findings offered hope for justice for the innocent victim. The Eva family was notified by the police of the discovery of Eva's body. According to the autopsy report, Eva was stabbed 19 times in the back and died of blood loss at around 4 a.m. The weapon was a navaja knife 8 to 10 centimeters long and 1 centimeter wide. Eva's death was a heartbreaking tragedy for the community. The attack began while the victim was still in the car and continued as she tried to escape up the side of the road. The wounds, especially to the ear and the back of the head, showed the brutal nature of the crime. The first wound was severe enough to cause death. Forensic evidence showed that the victim was also sexually assaulted. DNA samples from the same attacker were found on the victim's body and clothes, proving this barbaric crime. The discovery of a red cloth in the victim's mouth was determined to be from a regular car seat cover. This suggests that Eva was taken into the car after being kidnapped. This detail reflects the painful final moments of the innocent victim. However, since the body was found fully clothed and there were no obvious signs of violence, investigators and police initially thought it might have been a consensual sexual encounter that led to a deadly fight. Eva's parents believe that their daughter was kidnapped, raped and murdered to cover up the evidence. They do not agree with the view that Eva committed suicide. The police expect the case to be solved quickly. They suspect that an acquaintance of Eva's offered to drive her and took her to a secluded place, a popular spot for couples, where the tragedy occurred. Police initially suspected Eva's ex-boyfriend in Fuente El Saz, but he was cleared after questioning. The investigation then focused on men known to Eva's family, specifically people she might have trusted enough to take a ride with. Nevertheless, as the case became more complex, police could not dismiss the possibility that the perpetrator was a complete stranger. But Eva's friends were adamant that she would never take a ride with a stranger and believed that she had been forced into the car. Adding to the mystery, some neighbors linked the incident to an unknown blue car that was seen in town around midnight following another girl. The driver was described as a blonde man in his 20s. Unfortunately, no one recorded the license plate number, leaving a vital clue in the case untraceable. During the investigation, investigators discovered unidentified male bodily fluids on Eva's body and clothing. However, this information was kept secret and not disclosed to Eva's family or the public. Simultaneously, the police secretly collected DNA samples from men who were related to or knew Eva to compare with the DNA found in the fluids. Eva's father's, Manuel DNA was taken from a cigarette he had smoked while drinking coffee and discussing the case with the police. Other samples were discreetly collected from alcohol tests or from cups used by the suspect in a bar. Although no matches were found, the Civil Defense Police still believe that the perpetrator is an adult male living in Algiers or the surrounding areas. The investigation continues while Eva family yearns to find out the truth. 8 months after Eva died in a tragic incident, her mother found 2 secret diaries in her daughter's room. The diaries were dated 1995 to 1996 and 1996 to 1997, in which Eva recorded details of her daily life up until the day she was murdered. Most of the entries revolved around Eva and her ex-boyfriend Miguel. Their names were repeatedly written in different colors of ink throughout the pages. Near the end of the book, Miguel's name was suddenly replaced by the number 343110, while Eva's name remained the same. Despite many attempts to decipher the meaning of this number, no one has found a satisfactory explanation. The true meaning of the number remains a mystery, leaving Eva's family and investigators haunted by this puzzling clue. After Manuel's DNA was ruled out as that of a suspect, he launched a campaign calling on Algiers residents to voluntarily provide DNA samples to help with the investigation. With the mayor's support, in November 1999 an official notice was issued asking all males over the age of 16, about 5,000 people, to provide hair or saliva samples. However, Spanish judicial authorities rejected the proposal, considering it naive, inappropriate, and useless. Additionally, it could stigmatize those who refuse to provide DNA, a legal right without a court order. They also believed that the perpetrator would not voluntarily provide his DNA sample. Eva's father collected 2013 DNA samples from residents of Algiers and surrounding towns and sent them to the local court for a decision. The judge requested an opinion from the Madrid chief prosecutor on the legality of the testing. On March 30, 2000, Chief Prosecutor stressed that only those suspected in the investigation should be tested, not all volunteers. Consequently, only 45 samples were tested, including 12 from Eva's relatives, acquaintances, and the people with criminal records, especially cases involving sexual crimes and knife violence. Time passed and the case went cold. But the turning point of the case occurred when a woman reported to the authorities that she saw a suspicious man at the construction site around 8 a.m., before Eva's body was found. The man was sloppily dressed, walking in the rain without an umbrella, looking as if he had been up all night, and appeared to be searching for something before getting into a white Renault 18. Police considered her testimony credible, as several other witnesses had also reported seeing the Renault 18 years ago, matching the fibers found on Eva's body. On October 28, 2013, police released a sketch of the suspect, made with the cooperation of a new witness. The man was described in 1997 as being about 35 to 40 years old, 170 to 180 centimeters tall, weighing 75 to 80 kilograms, obese, with short brown hair, a square face and hard features, and deep-set eyes. He was wearing a white shirt, a V-neck sweater, and was driving a white Renault 18 with red upholstery. A secret telephone number and email address were set up to collect information, receiving 100 emails by January 1, 2014. In late 2013, the investigation took a major step forward when DNA from the fluid suggested the suspect was of North African origin. Police asked 300 North African men who had lived in Algiers in 1997 to volunteer their DNA samples. A former neighbor of Eva's, now living in the south of France, had a close match to the killer, suggesting the DNA in question could belong to the neighbor's sibling. Subsequent DNA analysis revealed a man named Ahmed Chell. On October 1, 2015, Ahmed was arrested outside his workplace in Vizel-Somme, France, in a joint operation by the civil police and the French gendarmerie. Ahmed Chell was born on March 1, 1963 in Taza, Morocco. He married a 20-year-old Spanish woman in 1989 in Madrid and became a Spanish citizen in the 1990s. They had one child and Eva was 5 months pregnant when Ahmed's wife was murdered. They were not registered residents in Algiers because they lived in the truck of Ahmed's employer, where he worked as a delivery man, about 4 kilometers from the scene of the crime. In 1999, the Chels moved to France, where they separated amicably but were still listed as married in Spain. In 2003, Ahmed remarried a young Moroccan woman who lived near the Swiss border and had children. He worked as a welder on agricultural machinery but struggled with relationships with his colleagues. When confronted with DNA evidence, Ahmed claimed that 2 unidentified men had taken him to Eva's body and forced him to touch her. However, his ex-wife denied this, telling reporters that Ahmed had actually gone out with his brothers, as they often did on weekends. She revealed that one of the brothers had said he had been at the same club as Eva and had spoken to her after she had a fight with her ex-boyfriend. Eva returned to the club at 11 p.m. with friends instead of her brothers. Ahmed's ex-wife said that she and her brothers had not been questioned by the police. She denied that Ahmed was abusive but admitted he was aggressive when drunk. Female colleagues and clients found Ahmed unapproachable, aggressive when drunk, and unsuitable for women. Eva's family had little contact with Ahmed's brother and had not met Ahmed. On October 5, 2015, Ahmed attempted suicide but failed, after which he agreed to be deported to Spain for trial. At a hearing on October 13, he remained silent but provided DNA. He was detained until DNA testing confirmed his involvement. In January 2016, the prison psychiatric unit removed Ahmed's anti-suicide measures. Ahmed claimed he had been forced to touch Eva, denied any penetration, but could not explain why his bodily fluids were present in her genital area. On January 29, 2016, Ahmed was found dead in his cell, having committed suicide by hanging himself with his shoelaces. The trial officially ended on February 15, 2016. Eva's family, despite finding their daughter's killer, were disappointed that he was not held accountable for his brutal actions. However, they believe that justice will be served in the afterlife. Eva's story is a journey to find justice after loss. The community unites to find answers for the young girl whose life was taken.